Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was placed in a team with a sensei who truly cared for him and teammates part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Konoha was known worldwide for its moderately warm temperature, the climate producing bountiful harvests that villages on the side of cool, crisp days and poverty would give a limb or two for. The Hidden Leaf Village was highly recognized for its display of talented and skilled ninja. It had upheld a position of high achievement and accumulative numbers in the shinobi ranks over the years, at the same time maintaining a steady treaty with several other hidden villages. In addition to those features, the fiery village seemed to attract a fair amount of tourists and guests all year round. Families that just happened to have a spare amount of fortune often chose to take to the village where no shadow remained a patch of darkness for long. As it was, there were several sites worthy of classification as tourist attractions, one being the infamous Hokage Tower, and the other the Hokage Monument, a large, intricately carved slab of stone that depicted the previous and current Hokages. And, as today's family of tourists would soon discover, it appeared to be traditional to slather paint over the preserved stone faces, inscribing various scribbles and uncouthly remarks. All in broad daylight, too. A businessman from mainland, a father of 2 young children, cleared his throat and tapped the shoulder of the Chunin shinobi that had been assigned to produce a tour of the village for the family. "Excuse me, good sir," he said, a slight tone of disapproval apparent in his deep voice. The Chunin turned to face the man. He did well to disguise the expression of utter boredom and chagrin. If there was one thing Hitan Kiyoshi happened to label near the top of his list of idiotic doings I refused to subject myself but am forced to list, it would be leading such sightseers around the village. He had been Chunin for 8 years, had been denied the opportunity to rise in rank to Jounin, and quite honestly, he was pissed off. As he laid his dulled gaze on the businessman referring he, a toughened shinobi, as a good sir, he had the sudden urge to teach the man exactly what a good sir such as Kiyoshi was capable of. However, although forcing 2 saban up the man's nostrils would certainly qualify him as the latest addition to the many attractions the village had to offer, he had the vague idea that the Hokage would not be amused. So, for the sake of his career, Kiyoshi guided the creative half of his mind back onto sensible territory. He pasted a forcibly upturned smile on his face and beamed at the tourist, trying not to be disgusted by the older man's smooth, obviously manicured hands. These were hands that knew only how to deal with dead piles of paperwork, and not the roughened edges of kunai. "Yes, Hitan Kiyoshi, at your service. How may I help you?" The businessman seemed not to notice the sarcasm dripping from his host's honey tone. Instead, he frowned toward the monument and tried to find the words. "Please correct me if I am wrong," but it did not so much as hint in the brochure that such outrageously inappropriate acts would the man's face flush to a peculiar shade of violet as his eyes slanted into slits. Kiyoshi rolled his eyes. "Trust the high and mighty to make such a big deal out of the simplest matters." "Yes?" he prompted, unable to prevent his toe from tapping on the pavement, dangerously close to the man's polished shoes. Dust lingered in the thin morning air. The man's wife returned and she glanced at her husband with an inquiring look in her eyes, her hands suspiciously guiding her children's curious gazes away from the big rock thingy. The businessman slipped his arm around his wife's slender shoulders and they shuffled backward, away from their guide. It was about time for Kiyoshi to snap, and he did. "What?" he growled, irritated. "I doubt Hokage-sama would appreciate your disrespect toward his predecessors." The man's lips twitched. "I suggest you see for yourself," he grumbled, turning his small family away. "Up there." Kiyoshi glanced up at the Hokage stone. "Nothing is out of place," he called after the tourists. "Hey, come back," and his voice broke off as he snapped his head around to stare at the monument again. 3 seconds passed, and then his eyes narrowed. He groaned and slapped a hand to his forehead. "Oh no, not again." "Naruto," as if on cue, an obnoxiously loud wahoo filled the air, and Kiyoshi whipped around to see a blond, blue-eyed boy breaking away from the Hokage monument and diving down to the earth, cackling as fluorescent paint spilled in his wake. Furiously, the Chunin whipped out his short-distance communicator, but raising the alarm was unnecessary. The patrols, fortunately, were not blind. They materialized within seconds, as if they had done this many times before. And they had. Kiyoshi dashed forward to intercept the troublemaker. "Get back here, Uzumaki!" he snarled, arms outstretched. "You aren't going anywhere but the Hokage's office." "Oh, shut up! Just because you don't have the guts." The boy laughed, and bounded upward. Kiyoshi growled and leapt after him, grappling for the blonde in midair. He succeeded in relieving him of the buckets of paint, and as they both watched in fascination, the colorful fluid spilled over the street, splattering over the family of tourists that Kiyoshi had been leading. Kiyoshi fell away from Naruto, hissing curses and bidding farewell to his chances of getting taken off tourist duty. Strangely, despite the torturous scrubbing down he would receive from his superiors later, he had to admit that the businessman's angry sputters were music to his ears. Naruto laughed once more at the color-coded family before leaping off a roof into the next street. He glanced back to see a handful of uniformed Chunin pursuing him. He even recognized some of the threatening faces. Grinning, the boy turned his head to stick his tongue out at them. He should not have gloated, he realized, when they pushed in another trickle of speed and started closing the distance between the two groups. He skidded on the dirt road into a smaller alleyway. He dashed into an empty side street, eyes flickering from side to side as his devious mind started to put together an escape plan. It had been a pleasure earning his own fan club, but it would not suffice if his great achievement ended with him in another staring match with Old Man Hokage. Naruto was absorbed deeply in his thoughts and focusing on the sound of his pursuer's footsteps. He jumped, literally, when a hand dropped lightly onto his shoulder. He yelped as if shocked and his feet left the ground a good 3 inches. He turned and stumbled back a few steps. He found himself facing a tall woman with long, flowing dark hair and eyes that glinted crimson in the midday sunlight. Naruto found himself blinking at the woman's choice of clothing, a set of wraps that strangely resembled bandages wrapped around her upper body, a single red sleeve protruding to cover her right arm. Swallowing became somewhat difficult as his gaze flickered upward to the Konoha Hittite that adorned her forehead. Judging from her questionable uniform, she was not a chunin. Busted. A high Uzumaki Naruto was very rarely lost for words. More often than not, he was the one who forced words into the mouths of others. Yet, staring at this woman, a sense of superiority somehow radiating off her being, he found himself struggling to put together a sentence. He realized that this was anxiety, which just happened to be a foreign emotion to the blonde. Naruto had faced and dealt with chunin multiple times, but he had yet to experience the wrath of a jounin. Irika, in hopes of averting his troublesome student away from public defacement, regularly dropped hints that he would rather be hunted down by 10 chunin than a single jounin. The woman paused, and then walked toward him. As she passed the boy, she tapped his shoulder. "I believe the art of disguising oneself would be suitable for a situation such as this one," she murmured, and continued on her way. Naruto ignored the bead of sweat that had trickled down the side of his face when the woman had brushed past him. He turned, and opened his mouth to thank her for her advice, but the chunin's steps were pounding closer. Hurriedly, he tore his curious gaze away and dived toward the fence. "Get back here, you little devil! Damn it, where'd he go?" "Split up. I'll go this way." "Right. Man, I can't wait to get my hands on that kid." Yuhi Kurenai quietly stepped back as a pair of flustered chunins darted by her. They had not thought at all to question her, this courtesy of the low-level genjutsu she had concealed herself with. A game of cat and mouse in which the number of felines greatly outnumbered the rodent barely seemed righteous in Kurenai's eyes. She paused to glance back at the boy she had passed. For a moment, she wondered if she had unconsciously cast her genjutsu on a wider basis. The street was absolutely deserted, deprived of any presence she could sense. It wasn't until half a minute later, when the cause of the commotion materialized from the fence, that Kurenai realized that he had been there the entire time, skillfully concealed. An eyebrow arced up. The boy would have done well without her advice. He had the look of one who had attempted such escape tactics a great number of times, and had been caught on a collection of occasions, from the look of it. Kurenai watched with a slightly bemused smile as an academy instructor appeared behind the blonde boy, hands on hips and an expression torn between amusement and strictness on his face. "Naruto!" The man screamed in the boy's ear. Kurenai's lips twitched as the short blonde was led away by his teacher, cupping his ear against the pain. "So this is Uzumaki Naruto," she mused. Yumino Irika did not know what to do with the blonde boy bound on the floor before him. Naruto, he was a handful. A bright ball of energy that refused to exhaust. The chunin sighed and leaned over, forcing a hard glare into his eyes. "What were you doing out of class, Naruto?" he demanded, ignoring the giggles of the other students in his class, apparently amused by their classmates' behavior. "Painting that big rock up there," Naruto replied in a loud, boisterous voice. He struggled into a sitting position, his olive goggles slipping over one eye as he did so. "I'll be up there soon enough, just you watch. I'm gonna be the Hokage, idiot!" Irika scolded. He raised a threatening fist. "You have your graduation exam tomorrow, and here you are playing around and stuffing up like a drunken monkey. How are you going to become the greatest ninja of the Leaf Village if you can't make it past academy rank?" Naruto recoiled slightly, but quickly bounced back with a retort on his tongue. "So? If I can't be a genin or a jounin or whatever, what does it matter? I'll find a way. There's no rule that says you have to be on the top of the ladder to be Hokage. See? I know my stuff." The boy's determination struck Irika, as it had so many times before. Attention seeker he may be, Naruto had a hell of a lot of confidence when it came to his ambition to surpass those who looked down on him. His endless pranks were understandable. The blonde sought to be the center of attention, to be recognized. Irika understood that Naruto had been shunned by the majority of the village since birth, and the isolation reminded the chunin painfully of himself. "Am I doing this the wrong way?" he questioned himself. "It would make your job a lot easier," Irika said in a much softer tone. Naruto jammed his tongue out and struggled some more against his bindings. "Doesn't mean I can't do it the hard way, does it?" he challenged. "I'm going to be Hokage no matter what, you got me? Believe it." The discussion was started to fade. Irika sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Fine. But this still doesn't excuse you from skipping class. 30 laps around the courtyard, and then you're going to scrub off whatever you did to the Hokage stone. The Chunin knelt down to undo the rope that bound Naruto's hands to his back. As he worked with the knots, Iruka could not resist but murmur in the boy's ear, being Hokage is hard, Naruto. Don't you have any backup ambitions? Later, he kicked himself for not foreseeing what came next. Sure I do, Naruto boasted. He grinned and turned his head to his classmates, focusing on one in particular. Hey, Sakura-chan. Will you go out with me? Pretty please? A breath of silence was all the peace Iruka received before a pink-haired girl wordlessly pushed her chair back and stormed down the steps. The Chunin could practically hear the death threats stirring in her mind. Given Haruno Sakura's ingenuity, he did not doubt that every single one of them promised much pain. Sakura, get back to your seat, Iruka said, his order falling on deaf ears as the enraged girl advanced. The Chunin winced at the amount of murderous intent that his student exuded. Despite the trouble he had caused, not even Naruto deserved to be castrated at such a young age. Moving swiftly, he tucked a protesting Naruto under one arm, stalked to the window and tossed the boy out onto the courtyard. Woo-wah! Iruka Sensei Thiao, practice your rope escape technique, Iruka called distractedly, before snapping the window shut. See? He's gone now, Sakura. Come on, back to your seat please. But Iruka Sensei, she protested. She pointed an accusing finger at Naruto, just visible over the windowsill. She could not even express her indignity. Yamanaka Ino propped her elbow up on her desk, smirking. Made fun of your big forehead? That's normal, Sakura. Iruka's face caught the bristling attack of Sakura's hair as she whipped around to glare at her rival. Shut up, Ino pig. Excuse me? Giant forehead. 2 seats away from Ino, Naro Shikamaru grumbled and shifted his head on the pillow he had made of his arms. How troublesome, he muttered. Iruka could not agree more with his lazy student. The academy brought back fond memories of childhood and the rise to a shinobi. Especially childhood and the friendship that had accompanied such. Yuhi Kurenai would know. Her path and achievements had stemmed from this very place, the slightly run-down clutter of buildings in the center of the village. She was standing on a branch of the taller trees that fringed the academy's boundaries. It was lunchtime, and the children had spilled onto the courtyard. A couple of instructors left the main building for their own quarters, relieved that they had finally escaped the hellhole of their respective classrooms. It was the day of the graduation exam and it seemed that the students were particularly uptight about the event. And, as all academy instructors had discovered today, excess energy, anxiety included, was usually vented out as quickly as possible in the most creative forms. Kurenai silently gazed down at the students. There was a curious amount of talent in this generation of potential shinobi. Some of the well-known clans in Konoha had shipped in their next generation. Kurenai noticed a Nara, Yamanaka and a Kimichi among the students, knowing that, if they made genin, they would most likely be placed on the same team. There were few students that had not come from such clans, but even then they displayed promise. Earlier that day Kurenai had stopped by to observe one of the classes, and she had seen a pink-haired girl produce an impressive description of the summoning jutsu, a technique that was well being in academy students' knowledge. Yes, Kurenai decided, quite a lot of genin would be produced with this year's harvest, and she knew that the chances of her being dismissed from the duty of heading a team was minimal. The third Hokage had already asked her the previous day to take a genin team under her wing. Kurenai did not appreciate such, preferring to work on her own, but it was rather difficult to refuse. After the genin exam, she would attend a meeting with the other selected jounin and the academy instructors to discuss the composition of the teams. A person who did not particularly take to waiting, Kurenai had decided to make use of her time. It was profoundly difficult to work with a team that was foreign to you, and to compensate for that, she had taken it upon herself to grasp the personalities of the future genin before it came to the team selections. The students seemed to each portray their own lifestyle and interests in their movements, even the slightest upturn of a word betraying their emotions. The only one Kurenai could recognize was the Hyuga girl, Hinata. The girl was painfully shy, just as she had been the first time Kurenai had met her. Hyuga Hayashi had given up on his eldest daughter and had arranged for her training to be overseen by the academy, himself focusing his time on Hinata's younger sister, who, admittedly, displayed more promise than the older of the siblings. Kurenai pondered on the possibility of nominating Hinata to be on her team, but then realized that it would take some convincing, the girl being a Hyuga and therefore a great asset to whichever team she was assigned, regardless of whether or not she happened to be the failure her father accused her to be. The jounin deduced that an approximate of 3 teams would be dispatched from the academy this year, and if her observations were correct, one team would be comprised of the Nara, Yamanaka and Akimichi kids, their fathers having proved the combination of their clan techniques deadly effective. That left Kurenai and the remaining jounin to decide their teams, and the former found herself growing worried. It was not good odds. Being, undoubtedly, the least experienced jounin, she would receive last preference, and another's word would rule out hers. It seemed there was not much Kurenai could do for Hinata. It took a moment for the jounin to register that a faint scent of noodles happened to be wafting toward her. The rope by her feet, bound to the branch, creaked slightly as a weight transferred onto the swing it suspended. Kurenai, absorbed in her own thoughts, was momentarily taken off guard. Instincts sorely tempted her to leap away from her perch, but she knew doing so would send a shower of leaves to announce her leave. Kurenai subtly edged around the branch to transfer to another, gaining a better view of the boy that had effectively startled her. It was Uzumaki Naruto, the boy she had run into just the day before. He sat alone on the swings, feasting on a cup of instant ramen. He swung lightly as he ate, slurping, and Kurenai watched him. He was a live depiction of dejection. He sat facing his classmates, yet the distance that stretched between them was wide. No one glanced twice in his direction except for the Hyuga, and even then she made no apparent interest in openly approaching him. Kurenai's brow furrowed. So it was true, the container of the demon fox had no companions to speak of. Kurenai had been a genin when the nine-tailed fox had attacked her village. She had been at the site of destruction, but only to watch by the sidelines. Her sensei and a teammate had been slaughtered in the first minutes of the struggle against mankind and the demon counterpart of humanity, and all the red-eyed genin had been able to do was scream and clutch at her remaining teammate as they retreated away from the mangled bodies of their broken team. Kurenai did not know if it was resentment or fascination that drew her toward the blonde kid on the swings. She ruled out resentment, deciding that even if it was such emotion responsible for her interest in the boy, he did not deserve such mistreatment. It was not like he'd had a say in the killings, or the fact that he was the oblivious host of Konoha's most hated demon. He was not murderous by nature or a terrible demon. He was, in comparison, friendly, attention-seeking and open to warm emotions. It intrigued Kurenai that Naruto could still smile through the pains of his childhood. She did not know him well, but she often caught the whispers of conversation as she walked the streets of the village. As it was, the Jounin had yet to hear a friendly comment regarding the boy exchanged among the villagers. Naruto was forever pranking and it seemed to have produced the results he yearned for. He drew attention, lots of it. His defacing of the Hokage monument the day before had earned more shake of heads than Kurenai could remember. However, the fact that the frozen faces of the revered Hokages displayed no hints of the abuse they had endured the day before when Kurenai had glanced toward it earlier that morning told her that the boy was willing to accept responsibility. It would not be the work of others. No one would assist the demon child. Naruto must have stayed up in the night to scrub off his handiwork. Whether it was the order of his teacher or not, it did not matter. As far as Kurenai was concerned, the boy did not disregard his responsibility, and that was a treasured characteristic of a successful shinobi. A drill that happened to be the academy's bell pierced the air. Kurenai glanced around the courtyard as the students unwillingly returned to their classrooms. Naruto followed them, confidently striding toward class as if he had no care in the world, as if no genin exam was going to hold him back. She took him for his assurance, and wished him good luck as he slipped into the building. It came as a surprise to discover that Uzumaki Naruto's name was not amongst the list of graduates that the third Hokage announced at the Jounin meeting. There were only 8 graduates, one short of forming 3 full teams. One team would have to make do with 2 genin, and Kakashi had volunteered to lead that team. His only specification had been the Uchiha, an understandable development with credit to the Sharingan the renowned copy ninja happened to possess. The Hokage gave him his preference without question. Kurenai happened to be adept at reading body language, a skill honed from many hours of sitting by the lake and occupying herself by analyzing those that passed her. The extent at which those of her gender expressed their open generosity often appalled her, the same way such a matter had while observing the academy students. Uchiha Sasuke appeared to have gathered his own fan club, one he reluctantly accepted but refused to acknowledge in existence. The Jounin deduced by the low tone in the third Hokage's voice and the lessened frequency at which he inhaled from his pipe that he was disturbed by an unknown factor. However, Kurenai happened to know that the Hokage and Naruto maintained a friendly relationship. She wagered most of her confidence on the likelihood that Naruto's failure to pass the graduation exam had disappointed the old man. Sarutobi cleared his throat to address Kakashi. You require 1 more genin to complete your team, Kakashi. Which of the remaining 7 do you have in mind? The one-eyed Jounin turned the page of the little orange book he had been reading. The Hyuga heir, Kurenai sighed. Predicting the outcome, she raised her objection regardless. Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but I happen to have interest in Hyuga Hinata as well. The Hokage nodded in acknowledgement. Kakashi? He questioned. Please explain, the silver-haired man said in response, glancing up briefly from his book. The gaze he held with Kurenai was friendly yet chillingly demanding. She returned it coolly. Hinata seems to have issues with her self-esteem, she said, choosing her words carefully and drawing them out at a painfully considered pace. To place her in a paired teamwork with one such as Uchiha Sasuke would intimidate her. That doesn't really answer my question, Kakashi said lightly. Kurenai realized now how weak her argument had come out. She silently apologized to Hinata, knowing that she could do no more for the girl. Before she could voice her withdrawal regarding Hinata Hyuga's team placing, a Chunin entered the room without knocking, flustered and puffing. Kurenai raised an eyebrow at the man's lack of etiquette until the news was delivered. Lord Hokage! Uzumaki Naruto has stolen the scroll of sealing. Yumino Irika paled and excused himself from the meeting, rushing off to join the search. Kurenai recognized him as Naruto's academy teacher, and deduced that the man held Naruto's existence to be of significance. She was pleased to discover that Naruto had someone who seemed to care about him, one who showed the opposite emotion to what one would display upon hearing that the boy had violated rules. From her observations, Naruto was gentle by nature. The pranks he pulled were not designed to offend or hurt in any way. It concerned Kurenai to ponder on what had provoked him to change in such a short matter of time. She noticed that Asuma had taken advantage of the distraction to light a cigarette. "Sure we shouldn't join the search?" he said, though Kurenai suspected that his offer was half-hearted and introduced more to suggest his responsibility as a jounin and Sandame's son rather than display it. Sarutobi Asuma did not bother himself with matters that unnecessarily crossed the boundaries to his job description. The meeting continued as if there had been no interruption. Kakashi, his team decided, tuned out of the conversation and retreated to a corner with his annoyingly perverted books that Kurenai swore to relieve from his possession one day. Asuma had, predictably, offered to take the Ino Shikucho generation. That left Kurenai with the pink-haired Harino girl, the Inuzuka and the Abirame, to which she reluctantly agreed to. It was well into nightfall by the time they finished off the meeting. Just as Kurenai was leaning back in her chair to stretch her stiff frame, there was another interruption, this one coming in the form of one battered Yumino Irika. He did not appear to be in the best of conditions, with several gashes across his limbs and a particularly large wound in his back. For someone as injured as he, Irika seemed to be strangely optimistic. The Hokage got up with a faint smile and took the Chunin to one side, and the two conversed in a low voice. Asuma groaned and reached for a new cigarette. "Can't we just get this over and done with already?" Kurenai gave him a pointed look. "Only women need beauty sleep." "You're talking," he retorted with an irritatingly convincing grin on his face. The third nodded and dismissed Irika from the room. He turned back to the jounin and gave a small shrug of his shoulders, which Kurenai now noted to be a cheerful gesture. "It appears that the three of you must remain in an old man's company a while longer. We now have enough genin to compensate for 3 complete teams. Uzumaki Naruto has joined the ranks of the graduates." "You said he failed," Asuma pointed out. "Mizuki betrayed us. He convinced Naruto to steal the scroll with the lie that he would be able to graduate if he learned the techniques contained within. Naruto has indeed managed to master one of the jutsu, and he utilized it effectively to come to Irika's aid. For this reason, Irika graduated him." For the first time in hours, Kakashi appeared to be interested. He did not look up from his book, but added in his voice, "Which technique would this be?" he inquired, though he had a good inkling of the response he might be receiving. Sarutobi smiled a genuine smile that Kurenai had not seen for a long time. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." According to Irika, Naruto produced scores of clones, filling the forest with them. The Hokage's tone dropped. "However, it appears that all forms of joy come at a price. Naruto now knows about his prisoner." Kurenai heard a sharp intake of breath that she failed to identify. It took her a moment to realize that it had come from herself. "Is it wise to allow him to become a ninja now that he knows?" Kakashi questioned. He was unusually solemn. "I don't see why not," Kurenai cut in, before the Hokage could answer. She stared unblinkingly at her fellow jounin. "The boy has proven himself to be an asset to the village. Why should we stunt his progress?" Pleased to hear that someone was standing up for Naruto, the third Hokage smiled at Kurenai and nodded in agreement. "Naruto will continue on his path to become a shinobi. Now, the matter settled, I believe Naruto should be placed under Kakashi's tutelage, given the fact that he has a vacant position available." Kurenai found that she was not particularly satisfied with the turnout. "Hokage-sama," she said quietly, "it is in my interest to transfer Uzumaki Naruto to my own team." She whispered a silent apology to Kakashi, having clashed with him on 2 occasions over the team compositions. She was relieved to note that the copy ninja held only a bemused expression on his face. Hatake Kakashi was not one you would want to cross rocky paths with. "Is it truly in your interest to do so?" Sarutobi asked her. "Yes. I believe I can guide Naruto correctly." Kurenai immediately berated herself for her choice of words. "Meaning I can't?" Kakashi asked with a slight chuckle. "Don't be mistaken," he added when Kurenai appeared to be on the verge of voicing another apology. "I don't mean that I object to your request." Kurenai smiled to show her appreciation and said nothing else. Sarutobi grumbled. He blew out a perfect ring of smoke and pensively watched it drift toward the ceiling. "Kakashi, Asuma, I am going to ask you to wait outside for a moment." The two jounin got up and left without a word. Kurenai found herself alone with the third Hokage. This was a man that had been personally handpicked by his predecessors, a man that, in his prime, had shaken shinobi with the mere mention of his name. It was impossible not to feel uptight in his sole presence. Sarutobi considered himself a rational man. Throughout his 60 years, he had made only precise decisions, ones carefully calculated and thought over sleepless nights before initiated. On the day that he had been deciding his successor, he had stayed up all night to ponder the candidates, painting himself by eliminating his own lusted student from the list and nominating another man, one who loved the village as much as Sarutobi himself did. Again, on the night Yondaime lost his life to defend the village, the old man did not receive much sleep. And now, with the fourth son, the container of a widely feared and powerful demon, Sarutobi had to carefully consider his options as he did each and every day. He moved to sit down behind his desk, clasping his hands before him. Leaning forward, he regarded the young woman before him. Sarutobi believed he remembered Yuhi Kurenai from her childhood. It must have been many years ago, and had his memory been faultier he would not have recognized this woman as the weeping child he had encountered just hours after the Kyuubi had launched its first attack on the village. She had been so small, so fragile back then. A child who stood sobbing in the rain, drenched in blood that seeped through her clothing to her bare skin, and an unconscious teammate on her back. Sarutobi remembered relieving the young girl of her burden and enveloping her in his own arms, her face buried against his arm, crying until she exhausted both her tears and herself. It was difficult to picture Kurenai as she currently was as her younger, 17-year-old self. Back then she had been a fresh chunin, and now she had become a grown woman, a jounin handling her own team. I was under the assumption that you were intending to lead a tracking team, the aging Hokage said. I don't understand why you would consider Naruto an asset to a team that focuses on something he does not and frankly, might not be able to specialize in. Kurenai smiled ruefully as if she knew exactly what her superior was talking about. I would rather my team be one that is capable of handling all the fields. Continue. You may not be aware of this, Lord Hokage, Kurenai began in a soft voice that was barely a whisper, but my Chunin team specialized in tracking. We tracked well, and those same skills led Kuta-sensei and my teammate Masuru to their deaths. We were the team that led the first wave of Konoha's forces to the Demon Fox. It was our team that fell first. She clenched and loosened her fist, shifting her gaze elsewhere. I don't want my team to go through what I had to. I want to provide them with choices and opportunities. Sarutobi's conscience did not fare off very well at the realization that he had dug up the young woman's painful memories. Then what do you propose? He asked gently, offering her a kind smile. A team bound by no specifications, comprised of Inuzuka Kiba, Haruno Sakura and Uzumaki Naruto. Kurenai just knew that this was not going to fly well, and she braced herself for it. A bemused smile crinkled the third's aged skin. As I understand, Sakura does not seem to be very fond of Naruto. Kurenai took care not to think of Hinata, who had displayed hidden affections toward Naruto, knowing that she was confining the girl to a powerful and unusually stoic team. It is just a childish misunderstanding of boundaries between friendship and emotions beyond such. Kiba appears to be friendly by nature, as does his dog Akamaru. They should be able to accept Naruto. I think I can stabilize the differences between Naruto and Sakura and produce a recognizable team from these three genin. Her lips twitched. From what I've heard, I think placing Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke together would be an even more unwise decision. The third was forced to put forth the final hurdle. Yet it is tradition that the graduates with the lowest and highest marks be placed together on the same team. What do you put forward to that? With all due respect, Hokage-sama, Kurenai said, picking up the rebuttal with ease, I'm beginning to doubt the Academy's standards if a student capable of producing scores of shadow clones is still labeled the last of his graduate class. I have also witnessed his commendable skill at disguising himself. The boy may not be a prodigy, or particularly talented at that, but he does not deserve to be ranked as the lowest. Sarutobi was beginning to wonder if Kurenai had already rehearsed her arguments beforehand. Shaking his head, he brought his withered hands together and clapped amusedly. Well said. Very well said. The professor smiled. Then I shall entrust the local prank master to you. Consider yourself warned. Kurenai's confidence faltered a little. Each morning at the 5th hour, Konoha's resident cock took it upon itself to raise the village's inhabitants with a shrill cry that was commonly choked off halfway by whatever unfortunate farmer happened to discover it on its land. Still, the damage was usually done by then, and the village started to rise. To Kiba's credit, he failed to notice the piercing note that hovered in the air. And with a nose like his, he somehow failed to catch the scent of breakfast. Get off, Kiba whined, pushing his sister away and curling in a tight ball under the folds of his warm blanket. Give me another second, Kiba. Now. Inuzuka Hana admired her mother for her strength and her ferocity, including her effective formulas that always had Kiba scuttling out of bed in seconds. Some possessed a canine wildness in the way she could unremorsefully snatch her son's blankets and drag him halfway to the kitchen. It was bad luck for Hana that her mother happened to have left the premises early for a mission briefing. Another minute, Nei-chan, Kiba grumbled, and slapped his pillow over his head. No, you suck more. I thought you were officially a genin today. He finally succumbed into opening a bleary eye. I am, he croaked, suddenly boastful. Then he blinked. So? His sister repeated. She crossed the room to the cupboard that she had just days ago cleaned out, and was now resembling a garbage tip. She occupied herself with picking out Kiba's cleaner clothes. You have less than 15 minutes to get to the academy for your team assignments. I doubt your team would appreciate it if you were late. Now get up. 4 minutes later, when Kiba was racing down the street with his morning vegetables having trouble going down his throat, he would regret not asking his sister to borrow one of her Heimaru Sankyodai. The large dogs were fast and fun to ride. They would have spared Kiba a good 5 minutes of running. If only Akamaru was that much bigger, the boy found himself wishing. He shot a baleful glare at his dog, yipping at next door's cat as they shot past. Kiba had stumbled into the kitchen, his clothing barely addressed in a presentable manner, to discover that his dog had made off with his breakfast. "I'm still mad at you, you know that?" he grumbled. Akamaru yipped happily. Kiba soon forgot about Akamaru's traitorous acts when he landed by the academy's entrance. Judging by the instructors still lazily making their way to class, the bell had not rung yet. Grinning, Kiba flung himself through the window of his own classroom, not digging deep enough to truly bother taking the long way around. He almost trod on Naruto upon landing. The other boy was lying in a crumpled heap on the ground, fresh bruises flowering on his face. He also had what looked suspiciously like footprints on his clothing. Akamaru sniffed the air and scoffed out, "Smells like someone was out to kill." Kiba had to agree. Judging by the lioness expressions on the female portion of the class, it must have concerned Sasuke. "Hey man," Kiba said, leaning over to offer Naruto his hand. "What happened to you?" Groaning, the blonde grasped the hand and let himself be hauled to his feet. He winced and nursed a black eye. "I kissed the stuck-up bum over there," he muttered, jerking a thumb over his shoulder. Kiba blinked. "Wow, Naruto. I never knew you were gay." Unfortunately for Naruto, he happened to have said that in a voice that carried over the excited chatter around them. The class burst into immediate laughter. Sasuke's eyes narrowed and he turned away to resume cleansing his mouth. Sakura seemed to take offense from the remark. "So what, you're saying that I must be a guy if Naruto's always asking me out?" She scowled, daring Kiba to agree. "Oh Sakura," Ino said with suspicious sympathy. "You must have been a pretty disturbed guy if you chose to be reborn with pink hair." Iruka announced his presence in time to catch the beginning of what would have been a dispute bordering the limits of feline ferocity. He promptly proceeded to separate the combatants, and place them in separate corners of the room, away from their beloved Sasuke-kun. The seating arrangement did little to resolve the glaring match the girls appeared to be having. The unfortunate people sitting between them began to feel a strange heat in the side of their face after a while. Naruto seemed not to mind. His bruises had started to heal, and he slammed his hand against the table without wincing. "Hurry up, Iruka-sensei," he said eagerly. "Let's get started already." For the first time that morning, Kiba seemed to notice exactly who he was sitting next to. "Hey!" he shouted. Akamaru barked to compliment the surprised tone in his voice. "Naruto? What are you doing here?" "You failed," the blonde grinned. "Did not. See?" He proudly stood and pointed at his Hitaites so that the class could see. "I stayed behind and did some extra work. I'm a ninja just like the rest of you." Iruka skillfully hid the smile that had started to grow on his face. "Alright, Naruto, we get it. Now sit down so I can begin." At this, Naruto dropped into his seat and leaned forward to listen. A dreamy grin spread on his whiskered face. "Let's see, I definitely want Sakura-chan on my team and I don't care who else I get as long as it's not Sasuke team." Before I announce the teams, and yes, Naruto, it is absolutely necessary that you understand the basis of becoming a ninja, Iruka cut in when the blonde opened his mouth in protest. "The sooner you stop interrupting, the sooner I'll get this underway." He cleared his throat. "Firstly, congratulations, all of you. You have now become ninja. Your forehead protectors mark you as a Leaf Village shinobi, and I hope that you will rise to become the best." Naruto and Kiba gave simultaneous impatient grunts, only to be ignored by the scarred man. "You are no longer academy students. The kunai you use will no longer be blunt and thrown at straw dummies. You will be entitled to missions, dangerous tasks that may take your life to complete. You have volunteered your services to the village, and simply by doing so, each of you is a hero to this land." He gave them a smile, the unvoiced sadness thickening his throat. "Your team," he continued, "will be as fundamental as the air you inhale. They will become your family. You will spend many years working with them, and there will be times when your life will depend on the actions and decisions of your teammates. You must respect, accept, and protect your friends. They are your precious people." The practice speech continued for another few minutes, and then Iruka began to announce the teams. He changed track from the traditional announcement to team components in a matter of seconds, and the genin barely had time to get excited before the first team was pronounced. He proceeded down the list at a steady pace. Team 7, Aburame Shino, Hyuga Hinata and Uchiha Sasuke. The devastated cries of "No!" from Sakura and Ino echoed over the silence of the said team. They both proceeded to bang their heads on the desk. Hinata felt strangely apologetic to them. She glanced meekly towards Sasuke, wondering why she did not feel very privileged. Iruka's lips twitched into a smile. Team 8, Inuzuka Kiba, Haruno Sakura and Uzumaki Naruto. Sakura pounded her head that much harder. "You got the dead last." Ino cackled. Naruto was much too caught up in his joy to realize that he had been insulted. Iruka's final announcement wiped the smugness off her face. Team 10, Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Chuji and Yamanaka Ino. "What? No! Who chose these teams?" Ino looked toward Shikamaru in dismay. Iruka sighed. He was going to miss all the ruckus. "You will have a lunch break before you meet your jounin leaders. I advise you use this time to get to know your team better. Good luck, all of you." "Luck?" Naruto thought as his jaw started to hurt from the amount of grinning he had been doing. "Who needs luck?" The fact that Sakura-chan had been assigned to his team, Sasuke free, was more of a miracle than a simple case of good fortune. By the time he emerged from his fit of joy, he realized that he was the last one left in the classroom. His teammates had left him without a word. Naruto's chest tingled with a brief, unwanted emotion. So maybe he and his teammates hadn't gotten off to the best start. So, Iruka-sensei did not seriously expect them to bond like peas immediately, did he? After they met their sensei, he would make ends meet. It was a promise to himself. Naruto's stomach grumbled in protest. He realized now that he had only gotten away from his apartment with a carton of milk in his system. And with all the excitement of team assignments, he had forgotten to bring his usual cup of instant ramen. He groaned and slumped his way outside to the canteen. After digging out Gamachan and discovering that he had forgotten to refill his purse with his savings, he left for one of the stone benches that lined the garden. He dropped onto the seat and moaned. A white four-legged animal trotted up to him and scratched on the leg of his pants with its front paws. Naruto blinked open an eye. Oh. Hey, Akamaru. What are you doing here? Where's Kiba? The puppy waggled its tail and dropped a can of soda onto his lap. Eh? For me? Naruto grinned and popped open the can. Gee, thanks, don't gulp it all down in one go, you idiot. Eh? He looked up to see Kiba standing over him, Akamaru perched on his head. The Inuzuka boy sat down next to his new teammate and extended a hand, revealing 2 small tablets on his palm. I smelt some overdue milk on you earlier. Take this if you don't want to spend the rest of lunch in the toilet. Naruto blinked. The statement did more than inform him of the fact that he had profusely tainted his stomach with tardy fluid. It filled his being with warmth, with gratitude, which happened to be an emotion the blonde experienced only when Iruka-sensei offered to treat him to lunch, or when the old man sneaked out of his office to play with him. It was the gratitude of knowing that someone cared. Kiba stared. Hey, are you, like, crying, Naruto? The shorter boy wiped furiously at his eyes. No. Just got something in my eye, that's all. He took the offered pills and popped them in his mouth, flushing it down with the fizzling soft drink. Thanks, Kiba. Kiba raised an eyebrow at the emotion he detected in Naruto's voice. I guess he is gay after all, Akamaru. I am not. The blonde protested. Akamaru barked. Usually when they don't admit something, it means it's true. Kiba laughed. Yeah, I'd say you're right there, boy. He turned and raised a hand in farewell. I'll see you in class later, Naruto. Yeah, hey, who'd you think our sensei will be? But Kiba was already gone, leaving Naruto alone on the bench. The blonde stared as his teammate turned a corner and disappeared from his line of vision. Then he gave the can in his hand the same amount of attention. He downed the drink in one go. Sakura stared down at the yakitori her mother had packed for her earlier that morning. The chopsticks were held loosely in her hand, clinking together but succeeding only in stirring her meal and lessening the pink-haired girl's appetite. It was all Ino's fault, so Sakura. How's life with that moron? Shut up. You didn't get picked for Sasuke-kun's team either, so I wouldn't be gloating if I were you. Humph, don't get cocky now, forehead girl. I hear Naruto did better than you in the taijutsu examination. As so? It's only because he doesn't have parents who set curfews and yelling at you to stop training so much. She hadn't noticed him standing there until he stepped out of the shadows cloaking him. One look at his smooth features swooned her, but a second examination of his emotionless expression caused her smile to slip. Ino left her there, uttering a hasty greeting before fleeing the scene. To be all alone, the feeling of a parent yelling at you is nowhere near what he feels. Sasuke-kun, it's just Naruto we're talking about. Why bother? You're ignorant. And annoying. Yes, it was Ino's fault. It must have been a devilish scheme. Now Sasuke was mad at her, and Sakura did not know what to do. She didn't even know what she'd done. She understood that Sasuke's clan and family had been murdered when he had just started his academy years had he related himself to Naruto and taken offense in Sakura's scorn. Am I really ignorant? Sakura was glad that the bell rang then, distracting her from her thoughts. She closed the lid on her untouched bento and headed back to the classroom. With each step, she felt a little lighter, and by the time she took her seat in the room, she had resolved to forget the encounter completely. But when she looked around and saw Naruto sitting alone by the window, it was impossible to forget. He was leaning back in his seat, with his hands behind his head. A perpetual grin was fixed on his face. Sakura found herself watching him. He annoyed her so much, just like yesterday, when he'd asked her out in front of the whole class. The boy she craved was accusing her of being ignorant, and the one she wanted to get away from was expressing his love to her. Why was everything so screwed up? Sakura supposed she should feel flattered by the attention. If it had been anyone but Naruto, she would be gloating to Ino endlessly each day. But that person just had to be Naruto, and as she watched him, Sakura wondered what it was about him that irritated her so much. So he had no parents, either did Sasuke, and he was still irresistibly desirable. Did he set her off simply by being Naruto? She speculated in silence. Naruto often fooled around. Perhaps if he matured and decided to learn the words grow up, he would be just like all the other males Sakura happened to fantasize about. Tall, strong, normal. In that instant, the pink-haired girl realized that, all along, she had maintained the unconscious impression that there was something about Naruto that just did not fit under the usual ordinary. She found herself peering curiously at him, trying to see under the laughing face. Unfortunately, she couldn't look away fast enough when Naruto decided to turn toward her. "Sakura-chan." He invited himself to the vacant seat next to hers, and Sakura groaned. "Isn't it cool that we're in a team together?" he asked with a wide grin. Whatever curiosity she might have held toward him vanished on the spot. "No, it's not," she snapped, as Iruka poked his head into the room and called for Team 10. "You're annoying and you're a complete idiot." "I don't," she sighed. "I don't understand how you made genin," and even though her conscience warned her against it, she added, "It might have been better if you failed. At least then I might have a chance to be on Sasuke-kun's team." His face fell so quickly that she wondered if she truly had wounded him. It seemed that she had. Naruto gave her a weak chuckle and sauntered down to where Kiba sat with Akamaru. Once there, he sank into a spare seat and ignored the prods Kiba gave him. Sakura felt terrible and she didn't know why. "Teammate," Iruka called, entering the room once more. "Come with me to meet your sensei." "Hey, come on," Sakura heard Kiba mutter to Naruto as she walked behind them. "What's wrong? Did the cramps kick in anyway?" It took a moment for Naruto to respond. "What? Oh yeah? Yeah, the milk sucked." And he laughed. Sakura was almost too distracted to notice that their jounin instructor stood before them. Iruka tried to salvage the awkward silence. "This is Yuhi Kurenai. She will be your sensei." Their sensei had startling red eyes that captured the attention of her students. Naruto, in particular. "Hey! I know you!" he burst out, pointing. "You're that jounin from yesterday." This earned him a whack alongside the head. "It's rude to point," Iruka hissed, and straightened to smile sheepishly. "Excuse him. He's loud." Kurenai smiled faintly. She led her team outside to the courtyard and sat them down on one of the benches. Their expectant expressions gazed up at her. She had to remind herself that they were now her students, and that she should set the example. "We'll begin with some basic introductions so we can get to know each other better. I'll go first. I am Yuhi Kurenai, and I specialize in genjutsu. I became a jounin last year, and this is my first team. I like learning new things, cooking, even though I don't get around to doing that as much as I would like. And I also like to treat my team to meals if they work hard enough." Naruto whooped. "You rock, sensei!" he cheered, only to be hit by Sakura. "Zip it!" the pink-haired girl hissed. Kurenai smiled and went on. "I dislike people who are sexist against females and slackers who believe they can achieve their goals by depriving themselves of hard work. My ambition is to help you achieve yours." "Me next," Naruto said, grinning. "Let's see, my name's Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen and anyone else who will treat me to ramen. I don't like the 3 minutes you have to wait for instant ramen to cook. And my dream is to become Hokage so everyone will finally recognize me and treat me like a great ninja." Naruto looked expectantly at Kiba even though the taller boy showed more than one indication that he would like to volunteer next. "Yo! I'm Inuzuka Kiba. I like my sister's cooking, my dog Akamaru and training with Akamaru. This is Akamaru, by the way." At his name, the white puppy in his arms barked. The boy continued with a grin. "I hate getting kicked awake and people who pick on animals. My ambition is to be a jounin." Immediately, all eyes turned to Sakura. She responded by clearing her throat and began speaking, her voice deprived of her teammates' confidence. Kurenai wondered if she was accustomed to having attention diverted onto her and not the Uchiha boy. "I am Sakura Haruno. I like flowers, reading and Sasuum and my parents." Her hands fidgeted in her lap. "I dislike Ino and people who make fun of my forehead. My ambition is to prove to my parents that I can be a strong ninja even though I'm the first of my family to take up the career." Perhaps the girl had more than intelligence. Kurenai offered her a kind smile. "Your forehead is perfectly fine and you have a very beautiful face." The genin flushed and lowered her head. "Thank you, sensei," she said quietly. Naruto grinned. "See? I told you." He turned to Kurenai. "She gets really strong when I try asking her out too." Sakura was suddenly brandishing a threatening fist. "Naruto, oh! What did I say?" Naruto exclaimed, and dived for cover. Kiba and Akamaru barked with laughter. Kurenai had once been their age, and she could understand their enthusiasm and energy. She gathered that she was not wrong about her team. Naruto was, quite literally, a bouncing ball of energy. She would have to do something about his unhealthy lifestyle and attention span. Kiba was deeply focused on Akamaru, and his loyalty to his family was apparent. Furthermore, he didn't seem to harbor any animosity towards Naruto. Sakura lacked the motivation her teammates had, yet it was understandable. She was the first ninja from her family line, and she was doing very well considering. Indeed, she and Naruto were quite the pair, but there was hope. Violence was the first step to friendship. Sometimes, Kurenai rounded up her students again. "Good introductions, everyone," she said, nodding. "This place is not suitable for what we will be doing next. Follow me." She led them down to Training Ground 27. The genins followed her without much conversation. Aware that Sakura was the only genin on her team who could be considered quiet, Kurenai wondered the boy's silence had something to do with her presence. Children were often like that, keeping their distance from adults they had only just met. She wondered how long it would take before they overcame that, probably not very long for Naruto. Kurenai also noticed that her new students did not talk to each other either. They walked separately as if the thought of sticking together had not even occurred to them. They obviously were not on very close terms. Kurenai was surprised to see that Naruto did not try to challenge the distance between himself and Sakura. Arriving at the training ground, Kurenai set them to work on basic taijutsu sparring, their opponent being herself. She was certain that no amount of observation could be measured against first-hand experience. Kiba beat Naruto in volunteering. He told Akamaru to remain by the sidelines and lowered himself into a readying crouch. Kurenai could tell immediately that the boy followed a form of taijutsu different to the basic methods taught at the academy. She was proved correct. Kiba's speed was commendable, but his rhythm was unbalanced and wild. His blows came from all directions, and Kurenai momentarily found herself forced to parry each attack without the chance to retaliate. She understood that this was the Inuzuka way of fighting. It was very similar to the ferocious beasts they raised. It took careful observation, but Kurenai soon discovered that Kiba attacked on a frontal basis. He did not slip around his opponent to attack, only leaping forward with the occasional aerial assaults. She sidestepped a brutal kick and grabbed Kiba's wrist as his momentum carried him past her, sweeping him around until she had both his arms pinned against his back. Good. Take a rest. Knowing that, although Kiba's methods were undisciplined and relied completely on instinct, it was his clan's fighting style, and that attempting to steer him towards steadier forms would most likely do him more harm than good, Kurenai called on Naruto. It did not take her long to discover that Naruto's taijutsu horribly sucked. His form was terribly misplaced. His blows had potential strength behind them, but his stance prevented him from releasing it. He seemed to favor no particular arm when he attacked, and he often found himself caught in a scenario where he would strike with his right arm and discover that his left leg was leading the momentum. More often than not, he spun a kick in the air only to overbalance and leave his torso open to attack. Kurenai decided at once that Naruto required much assistance in taijutsu. Not particularly adept at the art, the jounin resolved to find another tutor for the blonde. Sakura, she called, and waved the girl over. Sakura quickly adapted a sound imitation of the academy's lectured taijutsu. Kurenai used imitation because that was all it really was. Sakura carried herself rigidly, as if she had memorized the technique and was trying to mimic it to perfection. She lacked instinct and her blows were weak and undeveloped, yet she had a strong knowledge of where to strike an opponent to induce the most damage. Although the girl appeared to have pieced out Kurenai's movements and committed them to memory, skillfully evading the harder blows, she could not produce a challenge worthy of the jounin's concentration. It appeared that Naruto would have a sparring partner. That gave me an insight on your individual skills, Kurenai said while her students rested and caught their breath. There is room for improvement, as there is for everything. We will discuss this another day. I would now like to see your utilization of your chakra and your favorite techniques. She was running through a basic assessment that jounins with half the common sense required would opt for. Naruto had a grin on his face as he stepped forward and formed a hand sign. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Chakra seeped from his body at a visible rate, and soon the training ground was misted with smoke. Kurenai had never seen so much orange in her life. Naruto's duplicates blurred into existence, filling up the majority of the area. Kiba and Sakura gawked. Naruto waited a moment longer before releasing the jutsu. The clones dispersed, leaving the original looking very pleased with himself. Kiba whistled. Wow. Can you teach me? I would advise against that, Kurenai said smoothly. The shadow clone jutsu is incredibly hard to perform and it requires a large amount of chakra. Naruto has unnaturally large chakra reserves, so the technique is perfect for him. You, on the other hand, Kiba, would sooner drop from chakra exhaustion before you manage 2 clones. Disappointed but not altogether put down, Kiba displayed his own ninjutsu. He performed a jutsu that transformed Akamaru into a carbon copy of himself, and the two of them demolished a row of trees in a powerful frenzy. The most intriguing performance was Sakura's genjutsu. It took Kurenai several moments to realize that the hundreds of Sakuras surrounding them were not shadow clones, but an illusion formed by manipulation of her own chakra system. She was impressed with the girl's chakra control. She had barely sensed the genjutsu take over. Noting that genjutsu was not stressed as a vital subject at the academy, Kurenai saw potential. If Sakura could manipulate genjutsu in such an effective manner, it would not be difficult for her to master other techniques. You all did very well, she said, and the genins absorbed the praise wholeheartedly. Most jounins present their team with an assessment of some sort to gather if they are truly capable of becoming genin. If they aren't, they will be sent back to the academy. I have. What? Kiba and Naruto yelled. The shorter of the pair jumped to his feet. You're saying I worked so hard to get here and I have to go through another test? No fair. Let me finish, Kurenai said, and waited until Sakura had forcibly pulled her teammates to the ground before continuing. I personally handpicked this team and I have confidence that you will do well. I will not challenge your right as a genin. There were simultaneous sighs of relief that even Akamaru managed to echo. However, I will give you a small assignment. They groaned and Kurenai found herself smiling faintly. They were so predictable. Don't fret it. It's simple. I will wait for you at an unnamed location and it is your task to locate me before 8 o'clock. That leaves sufficient time for you to sleep in if that is a chronic habit any of you have developed. I would like to assess your ability to locate a given subject. Sakura looked troubled, Kiba more than displeased, and Naruto unfazed. They came from varying levels of the demography, had completely different styles of fighting, and their personalities clashed. These three were exactly the sort of people who could make parallel lines meet. So many things could go wrong with this team, and surprisingly, Yuhi Kurenai was excited. She had set her alarm to go off at precisely 6:15 hour. That was, however, not to say that she particularly appreciated being roused from her slumber and being subjected to the chill of the early morning. It was the time of day where the sunlight that glanced off dew-glistened buildings was young and the birds were too occupied hunting down early prey to be bothered avoiding the short-tempered shopkeepers setting up their stalls. She made her own breakfast that morning. Her parents were still asleep and she took care not to wake them. There would be another unnecessary discussion if she did. The previous night, when she had trumped home, fatigued and with patches of dirt caking her outfit where Kurenai-sensei had knocked her to the ground, her parents had immediately proceeded to fuss over her. When she had finally convinced them that their poor pink baby was fine and highly annoyed, they backed off to shake their heads and telling her that she need not take down this path and that although they were proud of her achievement, determination and willingness to be unique, it was time to realize that some things were not necessary, which basically translated into, "We don't like the idea of our daughter becoming a ninja." They had gone through this many times before. So she was the first ninja in her family line. So she wasn't accustomed to being thrown around like the first day of training had presented her. So she was not a boy. So she had pink hair that she had grown out to ridiculous lengths for the attention of a boy who looked upon her as ignorant. So what? Sakura irritably knocked aside some dishes to reach the wooden spoon, promptly erupting into a dominoes effect which she dived forward to halt. Holding her breath and several pieces of chinaware from their impending doom, the pink-haired girl listened intently for signs that her parents had been woken by the ruckus. When Sakura did not hear the usual creak of the fifth step on the staircase creak with her father's anxious steps, she gingerly replaced the dishes that she had disturbed and leaned over the steaming pot to stir at the miso soup. She poured it into a preheated thermos and started to prepare her bento, sticking in some dried seaweed and last night's fish. Sighing with regret that she knew would come back to haunt her when she got back after training, she left her parents a note on the kitchen counter to tell her that she would be home late. Once that was done, she shouldered her backpack and walked to the door. Be it surprise, annoyance, or suspicion, Sakura, to her credit, managed not to come to blows when she found a certain blonde sitting on her doorstep, his head ducking with sleep. She wisely closed the door behind her before sucking in a huge breath. "Naruto!" the blonde yelped, and shot to his feet. He instantly became wide awake. "Oh heyo, Sakura! I was wondering when you'd wake up." A vein in Sakura's temple twitched. "Is he boldly accusing me of sleeping in?" "Save it," she said shortly, stepping out onto the street. "Don't you have better things to do than sit outside my house? Kurenai-sensei is expecting us." By this point, Naruto had hurriedly relieved her of her pack and had shouldered it himself. He grinned widely. "That's why I'm here, actually. I'm gonna take you to her." One eyebrow arched up. Sakura studied the annoying pest beside her, grinning like the complete idiot he had to be. Was it possible that Naruto had indeed woken earlier than she had and located their sensei during the time she had used to catch up on some well-needed sleep? It was a rather unlikely and offending prospect. Admittedly, Sakura had no particular great plan of action herself, but to think that Naruto was actually standing before her, claiming he would be charioting her away to a destination she had not even figured out yet. Naturally, Sakura narrowed her eyes in suspicion. "How would you know?" she demanded. He seemed pleased that she had asked. "Easy. I just sent out a whole batch of shadow clones. Whoever found Sensei first came back and reported to me. And then I thought that you might need some help, so I came to pick you up." They turned into one of the main roads. Many shopkeepers loitered by the front of their stores, preparing for yet another day of business and common mischief. Sakura refused to say more, having become absorbed in her thoughts. So Naruto had come to the conclusion that she had no notable jutsu or ability suited for tracking. Boldly, it meant she sucked at it. She grimaced upon realizing that it was the truth. She let Naruto lead the way, mainly because she had nothing to lose if she followed him. A small ball of gratitude curled into her conscience, and Sakura found strange comfort in the knowledge that Naruto had come to her aid. He did not qualify as a knight in shining armor that the pink-haired girl would much rather be Sasuke, but the short boy was admittedly her teammate now, and it would not hurt to perhaps give him a little acknowledgement. She lowered her head, and her tone. "Thanks," she mumbled. He turned to her, ceasing the humming she had not noticed until just now. "Eh? What did you say, Sakura?" Faint annoyance glowed in her being, but Sakura forced it down. She was trying to be nice. "I said thank you." "Oh." He shrugged. "That's good to hear, but you should say it to my face later," she snapped. The one time she tried to be nice and understanding and he blew it. He was practically asking for it. She brandished a well-practiced fist. "It's your welcome." Naruto saw the danger and immediately backed away, frantically waving his arms before him. "No! Don't hit me! I'm too late." Sakura's blow, strengthened by morning irritation, blindsided him. She knew something was wrong the moment she staggered to regain her balance after the frightening momentum she had put behind her assault. She had fallen right through her teammate. "Don't hit me. I'm a shadow clone." The clone dissipated into thin air with an audible pop and her backpack dropped to the ground. Sakura blinked for a short moment, and then stooped to pick it up. "Idiot," she murmured, though she could not suppress the sinking sensation in the pit of her stomach. She eventually came to the dismaying realization that she had just jeopardized her one chance of reaching the meeting place on time. "I did not just do that. Come on, Akamaru," Kiba shouted from the door. He jogged lightly on the spot to warm up. "Let's get going already." There was a little over half an hour left before 8 o'clock, and the Inuzuka admitted that he was perhaps cutting the deadline a little closely. It had seemed like a good idea to sleep in, ignoring his sister's cool prediction that it would turn out the way it had. Kiba was not known for his punctuality. The small puppy leapt the last meter and landed on his partner's shoulder. He yipped as Kiba fumbled for the keys to lock the door. "Betcha I'll smell her before you do, braggart," the boy accused. "Fine. Get sniffing." Barely a minute later, Akamaru barked excitedly and took off. Kiba humphed and darted off after his dog. He swore to himself, as he had so many times before, that he would one day best his furry friend. It was not like he resented his companion for his well-tuned tracking skills. No, Kiba respected that, but it did little to assure his deflated ego. It became clear after several minutes of bounding over rooftops that Kurenai-sensei's scent was accompanied by that of fauna that Kiba and Akamaru had only smelled at one place before, the public park by the eastern border of the village that was home to a ridiculously long staircase. "She sure knows how to pick him," Kiba remarked, ignoring the flash of a breeze that swept back his hood. It was nice to feel the wind rush through his tousled hair, messing it more than his sister would have felt comfortable sharing company with. "There's like 2,000 steps on that thing," Akamaru yipped in agreement. "Yeah, race? Now you're talking." The pair shot forward at a speed that disturbed several breakfasters. It appeared that they might even have some time to spare after all. Kiba miscalculated his next jump and ended up flailing his limbs for balance. Noticing his master's apparent difficulty in remaining on their perch, Akamaru darted back and snared the boy by the trouser leg. The small dog lowered himself onto his haunches and pulled furiously, stalling the descent long enough for Kiba to wrap his arms around the chimney that conveniently happened to be within his reach. "I wish you'd wash your pants," Akamaru complained. "And you're clumsier than Naruto." The genin got to his feet. "Oh, shut up. Don't you smell him? Naruto's already there." As the dark-haired boy gathered a trickle of chakra in his legs in preparation to take off again, a slight breeze rustled in from the south, carrying with it a familiar scent. "Hey! That's Sakura," Kiba realized. "She's a bit off mark, don't you think? Doesn't seem like she's figured out where to go yet." Akamaru eyed him pointedly. "Probably because she doesn't have a loyal, intelligent nin-dog to guide her along." "So? Naruto doesn't and he made it." Kiba sniffed the air again. "Think she needs help?" He gathered Akamaru and bundled the dog inside his jacket. "Probably does. We're running out of time and it'll be faster if you hop in with me." "Don't give me that look, boy. If you'd actually bothered training with Nachan's Himera triplets, we wouldn't be in this stick." That said, and an indignant puppy silenced, he hurried off. Finding quick and easy purchase on the weather-worn surfaces, he leapt off. Sakura cursed her idiocy for the 22nd time in an hour. If she'd had the common sense to have asked Naruto, his clone, she reminded herself, she would not be circling around like a sightless vulture. She dug for reasons to force the blame onto Naruto, but it was impossible to pin anything against him. His intentions had been good, and it was kind of her fault for punching him. Giving up, she approached a nearby grocer. Excuse me." The grocer glanced up without any particular interest. "What is it, girlie? Some of us have business to get to, you know." She gave the grocer a weak smile, deciding that it was not wise to attempt to strike up a conversation while the man was not in his best mood. "I was just going to get some fruit." "Any good recommendations?" The man eyed her. He might be known as a slacker by his family and associates, but he was not dim by any chance. There was nothing that prevented him from glancing up and noticing the forehead protector bound on the girl's head, holding back her ridiculously colored hair. Ninja these days just could not be trusted. Sure, they held back the wars a good deal and gave the countries a good reason to trade with the businesses, but their sneaky ways were just too suspicious to blend among normal folk. The fact that Tanaka Noboru had, a good 10 or so years ago, been a well-known jounin ironically contradicted his misgivings regarding the shinobi ranks. Of course, having lived through the life of living in the shadows and acquired a sharp eye for small details, Tanaka was more than aware that some of the more arrogant chunin eyed his fresh batches of apples more commonly than he would like. "Bananas?" he offered, putting away the magazine he had been reading and craning himself forward to tap at the nearest bundles. "Just came in from the vegetable country last night." Tanaka allowed himself a chuckle. "Dunno why they call that place a veggie, their green stuff tastes like crap." Sakura's eyes widened and she nodded quickly. "Yes, bananas will be fine, thank you." As the grocer grumbled and juggled a bundle of bananas into a plastic bag, she decided that the man was still not in the best of moods, and she was intimidated by the thought of asking him for a favor of some sort. How do you know the vegetable country's food tastes bad? Tanaka scratched the stubble on his chin as he leaned over to hand the bag to his first customer of the day. Back years ago, when I could still take missions, I went there to escort their daimyo to meet our daimyo for a renewal of their treaty. Fed me this ugly green soup while I was there, and it tasted worse than my sister's, and she works with poison. Fruits are okay, though, he added, seeing the girl's expression. Sakura nodded slowly. You were a ninja? Well, yeah? Jounin. Reminiscence of his prime days had Tanaka leaning back and staring at the eaves of his shop with a slightly glazed over look in his eyes. About to join ANBU too? He glanced sharply at the girl. Pay up, by the way. Read the sign and work it out yourself. Oh. Right. Sorry. Sakura fumbled in her pack for her purse and handed over the money. Are you still a ninja? No. Do you think I'd be sitting here if I was? She frowned in confusion. But you were good enough for ANBU. Tanaka let out a booming laugh that had the nearby bookstore's owner swiveling his head to regard his neighbor with suspicion. This girl was hilarious. You ever seen a wooden peg leg, eh? When she unthinkingly shook her head, he chuckled and lifted his legs to rest them on the crate before him. See that? Sorta hard to jump around roofs when you're always tripping up, eh? Fix that jaw up, that's a good lass. Sakura tore her gaze away from the severed leg, replaced by a block of heavy wood that narrowed to a small rounded point. Sorry, she stammered. This was a bad idea. Big bad idea. I should have asked someone else. Someone who doesn't have a wooden leg to show off, the laugh returned. Nah, don't worry about it. My sister got into ANBU though. Damn proud of her, I am. Why are you still standing around for, girl? That certainly snapped Sakura back to her senses, and reminded her why she had approached the man in the first place. Have you seen a woman this tall? She indicated by raising her arm, with long dark hair, red eyes and wraps. Tanaka raised an eyebrow. You wouldn't be talking about Yuhi Kurenai, would you? Sakura allowed her hopes to rise. Do you know Kurenai-sensei? Have you seen her? I've known her since she was a genin. Her sensei was a friend of mine. The grocer peered at his customer. You on her genin team now, are you? You'd better watch that temper of hers. She was a force to be reckoned with back when I used to take her for a spot of training. And no, I haven't seen your sensei. Hopes fell. Oh. So she had wasted 15 raya for nothing. Thank you anyway. Conversing with the man had been interesting, but she had spent too much time loitering. She certainly was not any closer to finding Kurenai-sensei. She bowed quickly to the grocer. I'll be leaving now. Thank you, sir. No sirs, the man said in a lazy tone. Name's Tanaka Noboru. Sakura hesitated, and then bowed hastily again. Thank you, Tanaka-san. She missed the man's roll of his eyes as she turned away, and promptly bumped into Kiba. Oh hey, it's you, her teammate exclaimed, as Akamaru barked a greeting. Thought you were somewhere around here, Kiba? Sakura asked, confused. I thought you would have found Kurenai-sensei by now. He rubbed the back of his head in a sheepish manner. Slept in, he admitted. Me and Akamaru were just passing and we smelt you smelt me, Sakura repeated in her mind. Comforting. And we thought you might need some help. At this, Sakura took back whatever misgivings she'd held toward Kiba at his last comment. Yeah, I do, she said slowly. Naruto sent a shadow clone to help me, but I shooed him away. Kiba stared and laughed. Just as long as you don't shoo me off too. He glanced up at the sky. Oh damn, we don't have much time. He turned his gaze to Sakura, gauging her. From what he had figured from yesterday's training session, his new teammate did not have the world's most commendable speed and stamina. Having to adjust his speed to match hers would slow them down considerably, and judging by the rate the sun was rising toward midday, they wouldn't make it in time. But hell, Kiba would be damned if he was leaving one of his new pack behind. He slipped a pill from an inner pocket in his coat and fed it to Akamaru. Alright boy. Let's get this done. Just Kiba was about to perform the beast-human clone jutsu. Tanaka's voice cut in to interrupt. Hey you, doggy kid. Sakura turned, not altogether uninterested in what Tanaka might have to say. He had a distinct personality that made her associate him to a distant uncle of hers, who happened to have the same rogue qualities, minus the wooden leg and the ninja-turned-grocer career. Kiba frowned. What? Yutsume's kid? Hey, you know my mom? Tanaka grinned. And that stinking mutt Kuramaru. Tell her Tanaka Noboru says hello? Huh, she'll know who I am. Kiba raised an eyebrow and gave Sakura a look that said, hey, you know this guy? She shrugged helplessly. Sure, stranger. I'll tell her that. It did not take much for the boy to push the strange grocer to the back of his mind and work on the task at hand. Wisps of chakra rose from his clothing, forming around Akamaru. The puppy bared his teeth and transformed into a clone of his master. Hop on, Sakura, Kiba said, as he and Akamaru hunched over, side by side. It'll be faster if we carry you, she hesitated. Are you sure? Becoming a little burden was not what she'd had in mind when she pictured herself as a kunoichi. Sure. We practiced this loads of times. Promise we won't drop you. That happened to have been the last concern Sakura had in mind. Hesitantly, she climbed onto the kibis, treading carefully in case she hurt either of them. Sure this is okay? She asked again dubiously. One of the kibis gave a bark, and Sakura took the one on her right to be Akamaru. Akamaru says you worry more than my sister, Kiba grinned from her left. Just hold on tight, okay? At this, Sakura squeezed both shoulders she happened to have been gripping. Hey, girlie, Tanaka said, just as her carriers were gathering chakra for a bounding leap. She turned toward him. Yes? It's not fair if you know my name and I don't know yours, she flushed. Oh. Sorry, my name's Sakura. Harino Sakura. I don't come from a clan, she added, upon seeing the brows pull together in thought. Tanaka nodded, chuckling. First in line. Well, good luck with Kurenai. Sakura was about to bade the man goodbye, but Kiba and Akamaru chose that moment to leap upward. Their synchronized movement startled her for a short moment. They moved as if they were one being. Their bodies never parted more than an inch, never opening up a crevice for her to fall through. Weird guy, Kiba shouted over the wind that raced up to meet them. Probably, Sakura agreed. Her hair whipped around her face. But he doesn't seem too bad. Strange acquaintances were somewhat interesting, if not intimidating. For some reason, the pink-haired girl foresaw a great number of future trips to that particular store. Sensei? Kurenai lifted her gaze from the children on the play equipment nearby to regard her student. The only one present for the time being, she noted. Yes, Naruto? The blonde's finger trailed in the dirt as he squatted in a crouch. When can we eat? I'm hungry. The Jounin's gaze lingered on him. Naruto, what do you have for breakfast? He looked up. Me? He asked. She nodded. I drink milk and go down to Ichiraku's if I get up early. If I don't have time, I pack instant ramen for lunch. I skipped breakfast today because I wanted to get here early. At this, Kurenai frowned. The boy was not receiving nearly enough nutrition to support a growing body. She noted his stature, his build. He was not notably tall, but his bone structure appeared to be quite healthy. If he could effectively utilize taijutsu, his own limbs could become lethal weapons. Naruto was lacking in height, but she had already noticed that he had endurance and speed. On the matter of Naruto's taijutsu training, Kurenai had yet to seek out a tutor for him. As it was, she in truth had a suitable instructor in mind. She just doubted that she would agree. Kurenai was easily absorbed into thoughts and sidetracked, as Kuda-sensei had informed her enough times. She barely noticed Naruto jump to his feet until he started hollering at the top of his voice. Yo! Guys, over here! The rest of Team 8 had arrived. The Jounin followed her energetic pupil to meet the newcomers. Two Kibas were crouched over to allow a windswept Sakura to clamber off their backs. Naruto, grinning, went over and offered her his hand, which she accepted with a slight scowl. Akamaru reverted to his true form and sank to the grass. What happened to the clone I sent to pick you up? Naruto asked Sakura. He did not understand why his teammate's expression dissolved into one of discomfort. Next time, Naruto, she said, searching carefully for the right way to phrase her next words, you should make your clones wear big signs that say I am a shadow clone, don't hit me or I will disappear and leave you in the middle of nowhere. Naruto blinked. Huh! Sakura flushed with slight embarrassment and lowered her head. Naruto cocked his head and frowned in confusion. Kurenai found herself reluctant to break his contemplation. After all, he did need to learn to stop and think in situations where such would be useful in a life-or-death situation. Kiba's eyes flickered from one teammate to the other, all the while hunched over with his hands pressed against his knees as he gasped for breath, undoubtedly winded from the challenging hike up the impressive staircase. From what Kurenai had gathered, Naruto had summoned a trio of shadow clones to ferry him up the stone steps. She had to hand it to him. The boy had creativity. Kurenai was, however, impressed that both Naruto and Kiba had thought to think for Sakura's disadvantage and had willingly pitched in their efforts to assist her. This was a side to the exercise that Kurenai had been most interested in seeing. Teamwork was a fickle thing. Very good, all of you, she said. The boys perked up, but Sakura was not one to bask in praise that she had not earned. Sensei, she began, but Kurenai cut in with a prepared response to the unspoken confession. Each of you is unique and possess your own qualities and abilities. No one expects you to do well in every task that is assigned to you. That is why, from your academy years, you have been monitored and partnered with those that can compensate for your faults. These teams have been carefully discussed and chosen to suit each squad. Sakura, she said, looking at the girl, your teammates are there to do what you can't. Likewise, you will have to help them when they need it. Hi, Kurenai-sensei. Naruto, predictably, had only spared half an ear to listen in. He groaned and flopped to the ground, sending a small cloud of dust wafting into the air. Can we eat now? I'm hungry, Kurenai sighed to herself. How many of you haven't had breakfast? Silence met her. I suppose that's all of you then? She spared them the lecture that breakfast was as vital to a genin as their forehead protector. She would save that for later, knowing that such a sermon would most likely fall on deaf ears. I was going to run through a few points before we had morning tea, but I presume none of you are going to concentrate with your appetite unsatisfied. We'll get takeaway. Kiba frowned. But Sakura has food. He could smell the aroma wafting off her backpack. The Jounin raised an eyebrow and turned to the pink-haired girl. Sakura? The young kunoichi's eyes widened. Sorry. I forgot. She berated herself for her idiocy and produced the bundle of bananas she had purchased earlier. I have these. Immediately, Naruto jumped to his feet with a bright twinkle in his eyes. Sakura found herself in a tight embrace that she had not been expecting. I love you, Sakura. Deciding that she did not care if she offended another possible shadow clone, Sakura delivered an uppercut to the blonde's jaw, satisfied when no pop followed afterward. Naruto landed unimpressively at Kiba's feet. Akamaru trotted over and licked his bruised jawline. Smart, Kiba said sarcastically. He hauled the shorter boy to his feet. I think you should stick to just a thank you next time. Kurenai crossed her arms and stepped back. Her charges barely noticed her retreating to lean by a tree, slipping into the half-shadows. She watched them as they interacted, and noticed for the first time just how childish her team was. As any other experienced jounin could make out, Naruto was most prone to laughter above the average volume, and most of the time the cheerful grins were exaggerated. He was a cheerful being, yet the pain of years of exclusion did not bode well with him. That, however, did not stop him from pelting Kiba with banana peels. The Inuzuka did not take well to being bombarded with fruit sheddings, and he quickly retaliated. Akamaru sat by the side, opting to accompany Sakura on the more quiet experiences of life over aiding his master. Kiba's laugh was mocking and generously loud. He had no trouble socializing, and it was highly doubtful that he ever would experience difficulties. Kurenai's attention shifted to the last of her genins. Sakura was the most difficult to understand. From what the jounin understood, Sakura had been subjected to bullying during her childhood, the causes of which being her curiously colored hair and somewhat generously spaced forehead. She had apparently been befriended by the Yamanaka girl. However, somewhere between that space of time and graduation from the academy, Sakura had dropped her friendship with Ino and developed an infatuation with Uchiha Sasuke. However, watching the girl tip a small portion of her prepared breakfast for Akamaru, and smile when the small dog uncharacteristically purred, Kurenai could see the intelligent, withdrawn child that Haruno Sakura must have been in her earlier years at the academy. It was not hard to picture Sakura as a caring girl, but her somewhat violent treatment toward Naruto's antics belied the quiet nature. Kurenai gave them a few more moments, and then put her foot down. Her students sheepishly cleaned up their mess and followed her to a walkway path that circled around the park. The winding trail eventually winded back to the village's center, and Kurenai planned to take her team the whole way around. The males of the team immediately considered the stroll a mundane task and took to their unfinished squabble. Get off me! Kiba guffawed as Naruto pounced on his back and, grinning, tugged at the Inuzuka's jacket hood. No, Akamaru! But the puppy was innocently riding in Sakura's arms, who scowled slightly at her teammates' embarrassing behavior. Minutes later, the boys calmed down, and then started off again. The ruckus reached the point where Kurenai was forced to intervene. She stopped and turned around. Kiba had grabbed Naruto in a headlock and neither of them were watching where they were going. Sakura gave Kurenai a pleading look and the jounin nodded her consent. The pink-haired genin cracked her knuckles. 2 concussions later, Kiba's and Naruto's attention span lengthened and Kurenai relived every moment of silence they were blessed with. As a shinobi, your most powerful weapon is silence and stealth. She looked down at them. What makes you think the behavior you just displayed qualifies as that of genin? She received simultaneous mumbles of sorry, Sensei. The jounin sighed. The boys cracked open an eye to peer at their mentor. Kurenai raised an eyebrow at them and they quickly diverted their gazes. Perhaps she could use their temporary fear of her wrath to drill a lesson into their minds. She raised a hand to flick back her long hair, her fingers blurring in a well-practiced hand sign. What do I look like at the moment to you? She asked in a softer tone. Kurenai-sensei, Kiba said hesitantly. Is that your final answer? Naruto? The blonde had been staring at her with his eyes wide and mouth slightly open. He blinked. Sensei, are you on fire? Sakura had very little patience, especially when it came to Naruto. A vein popped, and she stomped over to the short blonde. Naruto! What kind of question is that? She scowled. An observant one, Kurenai replied, in time to rescue Naruto from his female teammate's wrath. When Sakura stared, the jounin smiled. Do you see it too, Sakura? Haruno Sakura was not one to believe anything with a deficiency of evidence, but she had to believe this one. Their sensei's eyes, naturally a curious shade of crimson, had small flames flickering in their reflection. Be it an illusion or the mind's tricks, Sakura could have sworn that Kurenai had seemed to tower over them with a gushing torrent of fire backing her. She blinked. This is a genjutsu, isn't it? Kurenai smiled. The girl was as knowledgeable as her file had suggested. That's right, she agreed, and the frightening image of an looming, erupting sensei faded. It was a simple genjutsu. Naruto's head cocked to one side. Sensei? Yes, Naruto? What exactly does a genjutsu do? His cheeks had flushed a slight shade of pink, and he was staring at the ground, as if embarrassed that he had to ask such a simple question. For the umpteenth time since meeting the boy, Kurenai had to wonder what the academy instructors had been teaching him. They continued walking. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Naruto's shoulders fall when he realized that she had not answered his question. The jounin kept a steady eye on the blonde, finally deciding that it was time she confronted him. Kiba, Sakura and Akamaru, she said, and the trio jogged ahead of her to regard her. I would like you to take a short run back to the park and then turn around and catch up with us. As expected, the lack of mention of Naruto did not slip by. Hey, Kiba protested. What about Naruto? He will be doing a similar exercise. Sakura visibly winced at physical training, but she obeyed without question. Kiba grumbled and took off after her with Akamaru. Kurenai kept walking, Naruto trailing half a step behind her. What will I be doing, Kurenai-sensei? The boy asked. Walk with me, Naruto, she said simply. His smile faltered. Oh, okay. He fell into step beside her, head lowered and hands shoved into his pockets. Naruto was not a big thinker. He was of the kind that thought only of consequences after he had caused trouble. Yet Kurenai was really pressing on his brain cells. She had seemed quite nice and friendly the day before, but today she appeared to be either ignoring him or giving him special treatment. It reminded Naruto horribly of the more unforgiving academy teachers, and now that he knew why they hated him so much, he began to dread the next moments with his new sensei. Naruto, Kurenai's quiet voice broke into his musings. He looked up. Yeah? What have you learned at the academy? This knocked him off guard for a short moment. He hadn't really thought about that. Well, the basic ninjutsu and stuff, I suppose. You know, the rope escape technique, which I suck at, and the transfo. She raised a hand to stop him. Let me rephrase my question. How do they treat you at the academy? She watched him from the corner of her eye as they continued to walk. Naruto stared up at her in shock. What do you mean? I think you know. He lowered his head and bit his lip. He didn't know if he should feel grateful that she cared, or if he should be experiencing a darker emotion. Kurenai sounded a lot like Sandame. It was always a difficult decision between spilling the truth and coloring his response to match the opposite. Without looking up, he told her about his years in the academy. How, in his first year, he had been shunned from the groups the other students had formed, and how he had spent more time sitting on the creaking swing in the courtyard than playing ninja with the other kids. How his second-year instructor had refused to acknowledge his presence and his questions, and how his following teachers had followed suit. How, by the fourth year, he had picked up Shikamaru's habits of slacking off in class and had been punished by having his face sprayed with spittle and then cleaned in the toilet bowl. His voice was bitter, and at times Kurenai could see and feel his shoulders trembling with fury. After she felt a warm trickle of blood trickling down her palm where her nails had carved crescent-shaped lacerations against her skin, she decided that her composure was probably not much better off than her students. But then I got Iruka-sensei, Naruto said, piercing through her darker thoughts with a triumphant tone in his voice. He was always picking on me and stuff, making me stay back and clean up the pranks I pulled. But he was the only one who would bother answering my questions. And sometimes he'd treat me to ramen when I do stuff right, like hit targets with shuriken and that kind of thing. And his voice trailed off there, and he pondered if he should reveal the events of that night with Mizuki's betrayal. Yuhi Kurenai could not say that she was particularly fond of the nine-tailed fox. It had taken away the lives of many people. She hated it for committing such terrible acts, and no one could blame her for thinking so, but at the moment she loathed it for being the cause of grief to the youth walking alongside her. Naruto had been alone for so long that the slightest motions of kindness had him rethinking his impressions of a person in seconds. It most likely resulted in false pretenses and betrayal of his affections, which would explain why he was so careful to conceal his emotions. Naruto, she said, her voice faltering with uncharacteristic hesitation. Tell me, do you feel lonely? He stiffened. Hey kid, quit staring at my dango like that. You want one, you pay for it. No wait, it's you? Change of mind, just shoo. Shoo or I'll get the broom. And most of the time he would linger to inhale the aroma for a moment longer until his presence irritated the adult, and he would flee, sticking his tongue out during the process. No, sweetheart, don't play with him. He's a bad boy. Yes, a bad boy. He would grin and tell his would-have-been friend that it was fine and that he would see him the next day, and he would wave while the other kids stared curiously back at him. When the next day came, they would ignore his greeting, and when forced to respond they would do so with an unfriendly comment. Yes, he supposed he was lonely. Hey Naruto. If you get this done by nightfall I'll buy you dinner. Sometimes, Naruto, it is natural to despise those who express the same feelings toward you. But you have to understand that, to become a good Hokage, you have to accept their resentment toward your existence and understand that no matter what illusion plays among your mind, you will never be truly alone. He noticed that Kurenai was still awaiting his reply. He shrugged and smiled. Not anymore. She nodded and went on to explain the basics of genjutsu. Naruto did not inquire upon her sudden change of subject and listened intently to the explanation, shooting off questions that bounced back at strange angles to another inquiry, which was often followed by a scenario conjured from his imagination. Kurenai nodded and did her best to fill in the years of knowledge he had been denied. Sakura, Kiba and Akamaru caught up with them just when she had been about to explain the process of canceling a genjutsu. Sakura, the jounin noted, was definitely in dire need of taijutsu training. The girl was putting an asthmatic to shame. Kiba, though winded, was grinning. Told you it wasn't impossible, he said to Sakura, who was clutching her ribs as she sucked in a difficult breath. Not everyone, she gasped out, glaring, runs crazy laps around the village every day. Kiba's grin widened and he slipped his hands behind his head. Hey, you're welcome to join me. Forget it. Kurenai stopped and turned around. That actually is not a bad idea. It would do well to improve your stamina and fitness, Sakura. Naruto, I suggest you join them. She commended herself on her quick thinking. To allow the three genin time to socialize among themselves without her influencing their behavior would certainly prove to be a shortcut to teamwork and friendship. In response, the genins just stared at her, then at each other. Naruto eventually picked up the discussion. I don't really mind, I guess. What time do you get up, Kiba, eh? Well, Kiba rubbed the back of his neck, seemingly uncomfortable. My sister's actually the one who drags me up for stuff like that. The time changes sometimes, but we usually get out at around 7. I missed my run today and she was gonna grill me. He laughed uneasily and looked expectantly at his teammates. That's cool, Naruto said slowly. I'll be there tomorrow. Kiba cracked a smile and turned to Sakura. So you coming too? Sakura cringed. She was still catching her breath from the previous run, which in truth had not been all that long. They hadn't gotten far into the walk and the distance had not been great. It had been hard keeping pace with Kiba. She even suspected that he had been holding back to wait for her. Reluctant to fall behind, she nodded uncertainly. I'll come. The rest of the village had woken while Team 8 had been absent from it. Kurenai dismissed her students for breakfast while she attended to her own business. She dropped them directions to a restaurant she frequented, though Sakura was perhaps the only one who listened. Naruto and Kiba had already gone ahead. Place it under my tab, Kurenai called after them. I will join you when I have finished. Yamane Takara woke to the chirping of bothersome birds. She found herself sprawled across her sagging couch, and she almost slipped back down again when her feet felt around for her sandals, tripping against 2 empty sake jugs that could be found rolling against the scratched floorboards of her apartment. Swearing, she hauled herself to a technically upright pose and stumbled to her bathroom to splash her face with water. She became aware of a certain presence when her mind cleared a little. A chuckle escaped her lips, muffled slightly by the cloth she had pressed against her face. What wind blows you here, Kurenai? The towel in her hands flicked out to snatch the bottle that had been thrown through her window. She eased open the cork and inhaled a scent of the rice country's finest. Not half bad, you're getting better at picking this stuff. Her former teammate stepped out from behind the cracked walls of the dwelling and joined Takara at the wooden table where the latter had begun pouring 2 cups. You haven't been taking care of yourself, have you? Kurenai brushed her gaze lightly over the woman that had been a close friend and confidant. She was disappointed to discover that Takara's brown hair was as long, lank and unkempt as ever, deprived of the natural attention a woman would force upon her appearance. The slight dark circles under her eyes told Kurenai that her old teammate had been doing nothing the previous night but drink to the hope of losing her consciousness for as long as she could. Takara did not forget, but she often attempted to escape reality. She had attempted to escape her physical environment as well. She was the only tenant in her apartment, which was situated on the outskirts of the village. Takara could only take her conscience that far, a place where she retained memories of the happier days, of the oaths she had committed herself to over a decade ago. She drowned out reminiscence of the darker days whenever she could, and they happened to disturb her on more accounts than she could care to count. Skip the formalities, Kurenai, she sighed, nudging a cup toward her friend. This hangover of mine makes it hard to process stuff like that. Oh yeah, congratulations on making Jonin. Heard you got a bunch of brats to babysit. How are they? Never having found the tolerance to alcohol, Kurenai declined the drink. They could do with some sharpening, she replied truthfully. But they are not the worst. Kids these days are always rambling on about how they want to be great ninja when they grow up. Good thing they had no war to deal with, huh? Kurenai did not say anything. She waited until Takara had downed a cup of sake and started pouring another. How badly does your team suck? 2 of them could benefit from additional taijutsu tutoring. Takara glanced sharply at Kurenai. Is that why you're here? And here I was thinking you were actually missing me. Kurenai pursed her lips. On second thoughts, that sake might not be so bad after all. I do miss you, Takara, the old you, anyway. Dead, Takara. I'm not going to get involved in anything to do with the likes of you shinobi. I'm done with it. You go ahead and pursue whatever crazy dream you still have, Kurenai. I didn't stop you from continuing down that cursed road and I hope you respect my right to stay away from it. Must you be so difficult? Kurenai sighed exasperatedly. She had known this would not be easy. Takara laughed. Remember how Kuda-sensei always used to say that? He'd give me this disapproving look and then say it with a grin. Do you remember, Kurenai? Takara, do you remember, Kurenai? Takara persisted in a harder tone. Kurenai winced. Yes, she whispered, knowing what was going to follow and bracing herself for it. The glint that had been in Takara's eyes dulled. And do you remember how he died, Kurenai? Do you remember how we were going to charge into battle like the good ninja we were supposed to be? Do you remember how Masura's bones cracked like twigs? Do you remember what Sensei's flesh smelt? She did. Of course she did. Takara, this has to stop. You have to stop living in the past. I'm not living in it, the other woman hissed. Both had risen to their feet, facing each other over the ancient table that creaked under the weight of their palms slamming onto its surface. I'm running away from it. You really think putting up that smile over all else will work, Kurenai? It doesn't. Trust me, I've tried and it doesn't goddamn work. She heaved in a deep breath and sat down, shakily emptying the sake gourd into her mouth. I'm done with being a kunoichi, Kurenai, she said in a softer tone after she had wiped her mouth. I'm done. I'm not going to teach your students. Go find someone else. Get Guy. He'll do it if you ask. Guy has his own genin team to consider. As you are constantly reminding me, Takara, you don't. Takara raised an eyebrow and a smile that reminded Kurenai of its mischievous counterpart touched her lips. One reason? Is that all you can come up with these days, Kurenai? Kurenai turned away so that her friend could not see her own smile. Yes, really? Her teammate pressed. Yes. Do you swear on Masuru and Sensei's graves? The red-eyed woman regarded her friend. That was cruel, Takara. Their pastime comrades had no grave, no resting place to speak of. There had been nothing left to bury. I'm not going to ask Guy, and you know perfectly why. The other woman shrugged. Just checking that he hasn't shaved off those brows of his. Haven't seen him for ages. He's still yelling about his age? No. He's pronouncing the immortality of youth. Kurenai whispered a silent apology to the green-clad jounin with the orange leg warmers. Takara threw her head back and let out a short bark of laughter. Sounds just like him, she commented, grinning. Kurenai knew that if she squinted, as she had so many times before, she would be able to see the younger Takara Yamane that had been an official tomboy and had enjoyed pestering their sensei for missions. But then, when Kurenai noticed her friend rubbing her forearm, all projections of the past vanished. The red-eyed jounin knew what was hidden under the long-sleeved shirts that Takara refused to replace even in the midst of summer, tucked carefully away from the notice of others, and more importantly, herself. There was a scar, one that appeared to have been drawn with a ruler, and one that would mark her forever. Thankfully, none others joined its company since the first time Kurenai had caught her teammate purposefully harming herself. But it was still there, still visible, and the same could be said for Takara's unrelenting memories and her inability to accept them. I have a student, Kurenai began quietly, and she gestured toward the offending forearm when her teammate glanced up at her. He has scars as well. I find that emotional scars hurt more than physical ones. Less than a week ago, he found out exactly why the villagers hate him so much. She noticed that Takara's eyes had widened, but she went on grimly. He has determination like no other. His taijutsu is crippled, and the same goes for his reputation, but he still finds strength to smile for his friends. That boy, this student of mine, his dream is to become Hokage. And I intend to help him accomplish that. So for the sake of that student and another who also has her own dreams, I need you to help me teach them. Takara frowned. Don't tell me you have. The fragile moment was interrupted by a bellow of Kurenai-sensei. Kurenai herself winced. What are they doing here? She muttered to herself, and rose to investigate. Takara suspiciously followed her out. I thought I told you to wait at the restaurant. Kurenai frowned at her genins. She was nothing if not observant, and she saw Naruto's smile falter, for reasons unknown other than her disapproving tone. Her eyes narrowed. Seeing that neither of her teammates had the decency to explain, Sakura took up the task. We went to that restaurant you instructed, but the owner didn't want to serve Naruto for some reason. So we left, and Naruto got us ramen. We were worried that you couldn't find us, so Kiba and Akamaru tracked you here. The girl displayed an uncharacteristic fiddling with her fingers. Sorry we disobeyed you, Kurenai-sensei. Kurenai was too absorbed in anger to hear the second half of Sakura's explanation. How dare they refuse to serve her student? She glanced at her genins, saw that they were curiously staring at her face, and fought to keep her composure. She and that restaurant owner would have a nice chat. How much did you spend on ramen, Naruto? She asked. I'll pay you back. It was supposed to be my treat. The boy blinked as if he had never heard of having someone pay him back before. He lowered his head and gave her a wobbly grin. It's fine, Sensei. It doesn't matter, you can treat us next time. He smiled. But it's gotta be something good. She didn't know how her hand had found its way into Naruto's tousled hair and started ruffling it, but it seemed to stun the blonde. Something good, she agreed. After the mission, the sacred word was enough to send Naruto into an excited fever. Kiba's was second only to the blonde. Mission? They both exclaimed. Sakura scowled at them, but the corner of her mouth kept twitching into a smile. Do you think we're ready, Kurenai-sensei? She asked dubiously. The jounin could see where the girl's uncertainty was coming from. We'll have to find out, won't we? Kurenai replied. Naruto was beyond himself with joy. At this rate, they would probably be the first genin team to receive an official assignment. This very much satisfied the blonde. Take that, Sasuke. He was grateful that Kurenai-sensei was giving them the chance so early on. Naruto found himself looking at his mentor with reverence that had also been triggered by the morning's earlier events. Then he noticed a woman standing behind their sensei. Eh? Sensei, who's the hag? Kurenai stiffened. Takara held no specific loathing toward Naruto. She hated the nine-tailed fox, but she did not hold much against its jailer. It was the memories of that fateful day that prevented her from completely accepting the boy. But she did not take well to being christened with uncouthly nicknames. Who are you calling hag, you brat? She spat. In a flickering motion that informed Kurenai that her teammate's taijutsu had not regressed at all, she was standing behind Naruto with a hand pressed firmly on his head, forcing him to duck his head forward. Show some respect. The sudden movement startled Sakura enough that she let out half a scream, stumbling backward and away from the newcomer until she bumped into Kiba. The Inuzuka boy caught her by the shoulders, his emotions swaying between amusement and dignity. He wondered if he should be standing and watching while Naruto was being openly abused. Akamaru's whine told him that it was perhaps wiser to stay put. The small dog slipped into his master's jacket. "What's wrong with Akamaru?" Sakura asked, having felt the warm bundle wiggle its way up Kiba's front. She had taken a liking to the puppy, and she scratched Akamaru's chin in an attempt to offer him comfort. "Chakra?" Kiba questioned quietly. Akamaru whimpered. "No, but she's stronger than Kurenai-sensei, eh?" Kiba stared at the woman, who was currently holding off Naruto's struggle to freedom with ease. The Inuzuka shifted his gaze to Kurenai. "Hey, sensei, just who is that woman?" Kurenai glanced at her charges. Much as she knew Takara did not agree, it would be for the best if the genins associated with her. "This is Yamane Takara. She was my teammate in our genin and chunin years." Naruto, at long last, wrestled himself from the woman's surprisingly strong grip. "Oh, okay." He stepped back 2 steps and bowed to the woman. "Pleased to meet you, hag." Kurenai cleared her throat. It would perhaps be better if she was not responsible for the slaughtering of a new genin. "You 3 go ahead first. I will catch up to you later." "Yes, Kurenai-sensei," Sakura answered, and she went off, dragging Naruto by the ear. "You want me to leave Akamaru-sensei?" Kiba asked, pausing. She raised an eyebrow. "Are you doubting my abilities as a jounin, Kiba?" "No. Of course not." Kiba grinned sheepishly, and waved once before running off to join his teammates. Takara watched the kids leave, her attention focused particularly on the blondie. She knew that the kid was the demon container. Hardly any adults these days did not. His appearance and behavior belied his status as the QB's jailer. He was a natural troublemaker, which gave Takara the impression that she could get to know this kid too bad. His presence alone seemed to trigger sharper pain than a kunai plunging into her slitted wrists. "Him and the girl need the taijutsu training, right?" she asked without looking at whom she was addressing. "You still have a sharp eye, Takara." "Yes, they are the ones I want you to teach." "Humph. I told you, I'm not going to teach them not. I'm not going to have anything to do with being a ninja anymore, especially not helping someone else be Hokage." She turned and sauntered toward her apartment. "You'd better get going. Kids do stupid things when they're excited." Kurenai did not look back. She knew that she had outstayed her welcome. "Takara?" she asked quietly. "What? You may not have realized, but you and Naruto are the same." A chuckle. "Oh, trust me, I've realized." "Naruto." "Oh, hi, sensei." Kurenai smiled down at her young charge. She had drawn alongside her genins to discover that Naruto had been lagging behind his teammates. Kiba and Sakura were not spared curiosity and the slight tinge of concern. However, when they turned their heads for the last time to check on their solitary teammate and saw that Kurenai was accompanying him, they did not look back again, placing confidence in their mentor to put right whatever had bogged down the usually cheerful Naruto. It was to be expected. Kurenai had noticed that Naruto's smile had been of the forced kind. He was quietly upset about the turnouts of the morning. Undoubtedly the boy had been through abuse of this sort before. However, the hardest blow must have been dealt with the fact that he had been insulted in the face of his teammates. It was embarrassing and more than a little upsetting. "If I remember correctly, you want to become Hokage, don't you?" The grin returned, and it was less artificial than it had been at first. "Yup. Then I'll get some respect." "Don't you consider yourself respected?" "What do you mean?" Naruto asked. "How did your teammates react to the restaurant owner's rejection to serve you, eh?" "Well, I dunno, just stood there, I suppose. Then we left together." "And you do not consider their willingness to stand by you a show of respect?" Naruto was momentarily stunned into silence. "I don't know." Kurenai smiled. "Perhaps you should look closer to home then." Get it. Ha gotcha. Oh. That was my face, idiot. Don't let go of it." "Meow, it's getting away again." "Akamaru. Pin it down from the other side." Kurenai grudgingly acknowledged that her team needed lessons in stealth. After reporting to the tower, teammate had been tasked with the retrieval of a runaway cat, which coincidentally belonged to the daimyo's wife. Kurenai had been amused. She'd had a similar mission involving the subject's mother, and if she was correct, the ferocious genes tended to pass straight down from mother to offspring. She was, unfortunately, correct. It was amusing to watch her charges storm the forest in search of a feline. Akamaru had cut the search short, but capturing the target proved to be a greater obstacle than they were prepared for. Looking down at her team while they slipped through the muddier aspects of the unknown, Kurenai wondered if the occasional laughter that echoed among the trees meant that her students were somehow enjoying themselves. Even Sakura seemed wholeheartedly committed to the mission. She did not hesitate to leap off Kiba's back when the offer arose to launch herself at the unsuspecting cat. She ended up slipping into a muddy ditch, but quickly picked herself up and rejoined the chase. "Are you sure you don't want help?" Kurenai called down. She had to squint to discern the grimy genins from the surroundings. "Yes." The 3 genins chorused. Kiba hated the scent of cat, but it often enticed him to pursue it. He shook his head from side to side in an attempt to get the sludge out of his hair. They were going to bring the entire marsh home if they continued on like this. "Naruto!" the Inuzuka barked. Give us some clones here. This forced a grimy smile on Naruto's face. Flinging dirt from his hands, he formed the hand seal. Coming right up, 5 solid copies materialized by his side, and they charged forward. Kiba launched himself into the fray, and they piled onto the cat. His triumph was short-lived. The cat struggled insistently and managed to open an escape route by piercing 2 clones. Alarmed, it fled from its human prison, and darted straight toward Sakura. Startled, the girl could only stumble backward. The cat snarled and raised a claw. Akamaru leaped off the bank of the marsh, and growled gutturally at the other animal. Deterred, the cat changed its course and landed on a small island of dried mud. The two exchanged territorial barks and hisses. Shaking herself, Sakura drew up a plan in her mind and called to her teammates to prepare themselves. Kurenai watched with a more interested eye. The cat went frantic as a low-level genjutsu enveloped the area. Where Akamaru had been standing was a menacing bulldog 5 times his size. It snapped at the cat and it screeched in fear. Recoiling, it turned tail and raced in the opposite direction. A dozen Narutos came out from the trees, arms outstretched. The shaken cat skidded in the face of the obstruction and frantically looked for another way out. With a yell that made the small animal jump in its skin, Kiba dove forward and caught it in his jacket. Ha! Not so cocky now, are you? Naruto whooped loudly and punched the air, flinging a large chunk of mud skyward. Dirt matted, filthy and sweaty, the 3 genins and their sensei trudged back to the tower to report their mission. Kurenai had wisely volunteered to carry the shell-shocked feline, predicting several more complaints if she referred the duty to one of her charges. How did your first mission feel like? She asked innocently. The baleful stares told her exactly what her students thought of the mission. It sucked, Naruto declared belligerently. How's catching a cat gonna get me up to Hokage? Kurenai sighed. She had been expecting this question. In addition to acting as the army for their country, a ninja village also acts as a business, she explained. Clients will come to the village to pay for the services of a ninja. These are jobs that the clients cannot accomplish by themselves. More like can't be bothered to chase their cats themselves, Kiba scoffed. Kurenai smiled. That too. Have you studied mission ranks before? Yes, Sakura said before Naruto could even consider the question. There are S, A, B, C, and D ranks, in order from deadliest to easiest. Her answer earned her a nod of warm approval. That's right. The mission you just undertook was a D rank. As if in protest to being undermined, the cat squirmed and meowed in her arms, and Kurenai made sure she kept a gentle but firm grip on the furry disaster. D-rank missions involve close to no combat, so the pay is generally low. These missions are usually given to the new academy graduates to foster teamwork among the members. She could not resist a grin. As you 3 have discovered, getting dirty, Naruto deadpanned. Getting stuck in mud. That's teamwork? Well, imagine how things would have turned out. You didn't have Akamaru to track the target, Naruto's clones to do the dirty work, and Sakura to pull everything together. The genins did, and they came up with simultaneous agreements to nightmare, and all 3 of them sent uneasy glances at the cat in Kurenai's arms. The jounin chuckled and held the double doors to the tower open for her charges as they slopped into the foyer and mortified the receptionist with the muddy prints they left on the polished floor. You know, I think they're gonna be late. How about you just go ahead first, Nei-chan? Hana raised an eyebrow. What, you shooing me off, kid? I don't see why you're so uptight about introducing me to your teammates. Come on, it can't be worse than changing your diaper. The 2 were at the bottom of the steps that winded up to the park, waiting for Naruto and Sakura to turn up. Kiba sat atop the largest of his sister's Himera triplets, watching Akamaru taunted his brother by dipping the occasional paw down at the dog whose head he was perched upon. The larger dog, although recognizing that it was just a mutt, snapped playfully back in retaliation. The first time this had happened, Akamaru had scampered into Kiba's jacket in shock. It wasn't until the dog heaved with barking laughter that the puppy indignantly returned to even the grounds. The run wasn't scheduled until 7, but Hana had insisted they arrive early. Your teammates are considered as guests, Kiba, she'd said last night when he had reluctantly revealed the contents of his training session. It won't do to have them wait. Besides, what's not to say that you'll sleep in again if we leave it too late? Kiba had done more scowling last night than he had the day his mother had seen him off at the gates of the academy with a wet kiss on both sides of his face and a boisterously loud "Don't go anywhere without your sister, pup. Don't know when that monster under your bed will decide to show up, eh?" She'd followed it up with roaring laughter that made all those nearby turn their heads to stare, and although he'd only been 8 at the time, Kiba learned the meaning of embarrassment faster than anyone his age. It had been the first and last time he had allowed Sun to escort him to the academy. Because of that incident, whenever the words monster and bed were used together in the same sentence, all eyes automatically strayed to Kiba. Hey! Kiba, he glanced at his sister. What? It'll be fine. It's not like I'm going to bite them. You sure about that? He teased. She smiled. Are you? He jammed his tongue out, and she raised an eyebrow at the childish gesture. I don't suppose you remembered to brush your teeth this morning, did you? She said in a mildly disgusted tone. It's a wonder you haven't scared off your friends already. Leave me alone, he said in a whining tone. Hana smirked. Kiba brushed his fingers against the fur of the dog he was sitting on. He didn't understand why his sister refused to individually name her dogs. They were the Haimaru Sankyodai, nothing more, nothing less. It really confused Kiba when she called for her canine companions. She could communicate and command them like he did Akamaru, except she did it without the use of names. The nameless triplets gave Kiba a hell of a time trying to discern which one was which. After mistaking the brothers one too many times, Kiba had been forced to give them uncreative names for his own use. He had named them according to their size: Ikimaru, Nimaru and Samaru. He was sitting on Ikimaru, the largest. He also didn't understand why Hana had referred to his teammates as friends. And Inuzuka's sense of loyalty toward friends and family were very important. Kiba would willingly cripple himself in exchange for the safety of his mother, sister or Akamaru. He would fight to the death for his clan. It wasn't even a question, but teammates were teammates. He wasn't complaining about being in a team with Naruto and Sakura. They were strange in their own ways, but he could have been stuck with worse. In some ways, it was fun fooling around with Naruto and bringing out Sakura's mischievous side, but beneath the laughter and playful bickers, there was an unexplainable distance between the three of them. Without Kurenai around to create a bridge for them, the three genins found that the atmosphere could quickly become awkward. On the other hand, Kiba would be worried if they had managed to bond overnight. No, friendships had to be fostered slowly. Kurenai-sensei would agree with him. Arranging for her students to spend the mornings together had to be one of her well-disguised intentions to slowly bring them closer. Kiba hoped her goodwill would not be in vain. He resolved to be on his best behavior. Without warning, the Haimaru Sankyodai began to growl deep in their throats and became restless. Kiba slid off Ikimaru and the gray canine joined his brothers by Hana's side. He was surprised to see that their teeth were bared with suspicion. His sister soothed them with a touch of her hand, all the while keeping her eyes on the two figures that were approaching them. Kiba recognized the orange jacket and waved to his teammates. He turned to ask Hana why her dogs had been upset, but she had a deep, thoughtful look on her face and he knew better than to interrupt. In any case, the dogs had already settled as if the incident had never happened. Glancing over, Kiba wondered why Akamaru had not reacted. Naruto fidgeted endlessly. The sleeve of one jacket had been stretched and wrung into a damp mass of fabric that hung longer than the other. He had, upon laying eyes on Kiba's small gathered group, broken the skin on his lower lip, but it had been proficiently healed in a matter of seconds. Sakura frowned at her companion's unusual behavior. He had been fine when he had shown up on her doorstep, the real him, this time, but now he was a grinning ball of nerves. "Good morning," the newcomers said in unison. Sakura tugged Naruto's sleeve to remind him to bow. A tall, brown-haired young woman beamed at them. "So you're my brother's teammates, that right?" "I'm Hana," they nodded. Sakura bowed once more and introduced herself. When it was his turn, Naruto found himself unable to follow her example. He was a little uncomfortable with meeting new people. A teammate's older sister was a little different from victims of a prank. Hana smiled expectantly at him, and Naruto felt his jittering nerves settle at the friendly gesture. "Who am I kidding?" he thought as he slowly grinned back. "Since when did I ever care about this sort of stuff? My name's Uzumaki Naruto," he said with brimming confidence. "And I'm gonna be Hokage one day. Just you watch." "I'm watching," Hana said, and Naruto's grin widened. He liked her already. "Let's go already," Kiba muttered, somehow feeling embarrassed by the exchange of formalities. Scaling the monstrous staircase was daunting as much as it was exhausting. Hana left them behind, smiling, claiming that she didn't want to get in the way. She and her dogs easily bounded up the steps and soon disappeared from view. The genins of Team 8 agreed to walk and set a brisk pace. Fishing around for conversation, Kiba said, "I asked my mom about that weird grocer guy from yesterday." Sakura turned to him. "What did she say?" "What grocer guy?" Naruto asked curiously. "I didn't hear about no grocer guy." "Well, now you did," Sakura huffed. Physical exercise was not her thing and Naruto's badgering was getting on her nerves more than usual. She inwardly winced when she saw his ever-present grin slip slightly. Once again she found herself wondering why it was always Naruto who was on the receiving end of her frustrations. She hardly ever snapped at Kiba. "It's nothing important. We just met someone who knew Kiba's mother, that's all." Naruto blinked at her quiet, tolerant voice. "Oh. Okay." Without another word, Sakura lowered her head and painfully picked up the pace. The boys hurried to keep up with her. "Apparently," Kiba said, filling in the void of silence, "they've worked together on a few missions before he lost his leg. She said he saved Kuramaru's life once. Kuramaru's her partner." There was little talk following that. They had somehow kicked into a light jog and all three wordlessly agreed to focus on conserving their energy. Several times Sakura wanted to call for a break. She had developed a bad stitch in her side and it was causing her a considerable amount of grief. Miraculously, she managed to persist until her team hauled themselves from the rickety hell and onto the parkland. She sank to her knees on the grass and gulped for air. Much to his teammates' grief, dead last Naruto was barely winded. He hunched over, grinning. "Nasty, huh? You're not normal." Kiba managed to gasp out. Naruto's smile vanished to be replaced by a look of pure horror. It did not go by unnoticed. "Naruto, what's wrong?" Sakura asked warily. The blonde head came up after a quick shake. Nothing. Just remembered something weird. Naruto laughed unconvincingly. The arrival of one of Hana's dogs rescued him. The canine was alone, and carried a plastic bag in his mouth. It growled a greeting to Kiba and dropped its delivery by his feet. The brown-haired boy stooped to pick it up. From Hana? Oh, okay. Tell her I'm going straight to training afterwards. Naruto accepted the bottle of water Kiba handed to him. I didn't know you could talk to dogs. Sure I can. It's my clan's specialty. You come from a clan? Sakura squeezed her bottle to stifle the urge to strangle Naruto for his sheer lack of attention. Following the break, Kiba led his team on their run. They jogged down the path they had passed through with Kurenai the previous day. There was a thin trail that branched off and led down to the lake, which expressed nature's beauty at its fullest. It was a heaving body of life, the water glimmering off the morning sunlight and reflecting it gently upon its surroundings. It was also apparently a popular swimming location for young women. Sakura and Akamaru, with much difficulty, managed to drag the boys away before they were accused of indecency. They looped behind the Hokage Tower, brushing against the revered stone monument, and proceeded to cut past the outskirts of the village. Few words were exchanged. It did not escape Sakura that the pace conveniently seemed to ease up whenever her breathing started to get strained. She looked toward the boys whenever this happened, but they did not seem conscious of it. It was as though they were inadvertently obeying the instinct to stick together. A companionable silence settled between them, and then it was over. Sakura collapsed to the ground, smiling despite the pressuring constriction on her chest. That wasn't too bad, she forced out. She gulped in a lungful of air. It tasted sweet and refreshing. Yeah? Kiba said weakly while he doubled over. He drank the rest of his water and tipped the rest to Akamaru. This is the first time I actually ran the whole way without stopping. Feels good. Naruto fanned at his heated face with his hands, his tongue lolling out. His hair stood in all directions when he brushed it from his eyes and refused to be patted back down. Enthusiastically, Akamaru barked for attention and leapt onto the blonde's head, taking up perch on the sweated tresses like it was his rightful throne. Sakura lifted her head and cracked a smile. All hail the mighty Akamaru, Lord of Sweat. Kiba burst out laughing. A lopsided grin grew on Naruto's face. The humorous moment passed too quickly. An awkward silence fell like the blade of the guillotine. Akamaru looked at his human companions, cocking his head at their sudden self-consciousness. It was like they were embarrassed by the carefree interaction. Humans were so strange. Naruto did not like silence. It made him nervous and self-conscious, as if he had done something wrong. He wondered if he had. So he said uncertainly, dragging out the single syllable and desperately searching for something to follow up before his painstaking effort to support conversation expired. Are we still doing this tomorrow? Kiba untied the knot on his jacket indecisively, and then tightened it again. Do you want to? Naruto shrugged, his mouth twitching. It's alright, I suppose? His words were chosen with unnatural care. He didn't want to say something awkward and jeopardize the arrangement. Kurenai-sensei did sort of instruct us to, Sakura said thoughtfully, concealing hesitation. Her teammates nodded keenly, relieved to have a solid rationale to cling to. Same time tomorrow? Naruto asked hopefully. His heart lifted when his teammates agreed. A firm grin was returning to his expression. We still have an hour before we have to meet up with Kurenai-sensei. Do you guys want to get ramen? My treat. Kiba opened his mouth but was beaten by Sakura. Well, I was actually looking forward to getting home and getting a change of clothes and pick up a shower, she said, and this caused the boys to glance down at their clothing, grimacing. Oh. Naruto winced inwardly. Idiot, he berated himself. He had rushed headfirst into the opportunity too hastily. Sakura and Kiba might not be as eager as he was to establish a concrete friendship. They didn't have to deal with being alone. Sakura saw her blonde teammate's shoulders drop slightly, and she bit her lip. She had been trying to be a little nicer to Naruto. After all, he had tried to help her several times and he was actually quite good company when his big mouth was closed. You can treat us tomorrow, she suggested in a somewhat brighter tone. Naruto's face lit up with another grin. No problem. Still smiling, he gently easing Akamaru off his head and placed him on the grass. So I'll see you guys later? Don't be late, Kiba said. Am I ever? No doubt about it. Naruto shoved his hands into his pockets, pouting. Right. The three of them started to separate, taking their own paths. He waved once and then turned to head down the staircase. Then he paused and turned back. Hey! Kiba! Sakura! They turned quickly, as if they had been waiting for a final goodbye. What? Sakura called across the empty square. I forgot where we're supposed to meet Kurenai-sensei. Idiot. Sakura shook her head and was grateful that Naruto was not within hitting distance. She said her voice trailed off there. She glanced over at Kiba but met only his expectant gaze. Her brow puckered into a frown. Actually, I don't think she told us. Kurenai was a light sleeper, as some witty jounins tended to claim was the cause of her strangely colored eyes, and so she was well out of her sleeping kimono and slipping into her usual attire when the Chunin rapped his fist sharply against the thick wooden door of the house her parents had left her before killing themselves in a furious struggle during the Third Great Ninja War. Barely any words were exchanged between she and the dark-haired Chunin except a Hokage-sama would like to see you. Kurenai merely nodded, and the man snapped into a standard bow to one's superiors before he shunshined away. Kurenai gave her hair a quick brush to make it more presentable and ducked into the kitchen to snag an orange from the fruit basket. In minutes, she was tossing orange peels into a nearby disposal tin and proceeding to the Hokage's office. The pair of Chunin standing guard outside bowed and opened the doors for her. Kurenai nodded in acknowledgement and strode into the room as the double doors snapped shut behind her. You called for me, Hokage-sama? The third Hokage lifted his gaze from the paperwork piled before him. The edges of his eyes crinkled in a welcoming smile. Yes, I did. Thank you for fulfilling an old man's request so promptly. Kurenai did not know an appropriate reply that would not instate offense, so she bowed her head. Sarutobi folded his hands before him. A new season has begun, and there are several reservations to be made. I summoned you to clarify if you had particular preferences for a training ground. Be as it might that Asuma, Kakashi and Guy have already named and certified their preferences. It would be rather inconvenient if other teams were to interrupt your training. Do you agree? I do, Kurenai answered. I had been planning to drop by later today to confirm a similar matter. Is Training Ground 27 available? She had already gathered her thoughts on her preference the previous night, and had opted for a location that did not differentially appear to be closer to either of her genins' homes. It would not be fair to either of her charges if the others merely had to travel a short distance for training while the other had to suffer from early morning rises. Shifting through a file and puffing on his pipe, the elder man nodded. 27 is currently unreserved. I take it that you intend to put teammates' name down for a season? Yes. Training ground reservations could only be made for a season to provide squads that had been declined their first choice a second chance to assume temporary possession of their preference. It was also unwise for shinobi to grow accustomed and expectant of any matters, including that of terrain and scenery. It was foolish to train beside a lake for a year, focusing on specific water jutsus, and then have efforts crushed when they were sent to a mission in Suna. Sarutobi nodded and picked up a pen to fill in a form. Kurenai remained silent as the Hokage's pen scratched across the surface of the paper at a practiced pace. The third was not a man who strictly followed protocol, so she suspected that she had not been summoned purely for the sake of training ground reservations. Such small matters could be arranged for later when they reported for a mission. The red-eyed Jounin came to the silent conclusion that no Hokage would willingly invite paperwork. The third expelled regular clouds of smoke, and Kurenai realized that, though they did not get along particularly well, Asuma and his father used the same brand of tobacco. It is done, Sarutobi said, and closing the file, leaned back into his armchair. Kurenai waited. The Hokage regarded her. How is your team coming along, Kurenai? I thought so, she mused. They are developing at a steady pace. As for Naruto, Sarutobi raised an eyebrow as her voice trailed off. Has something happened to him? She shook her head. No. However, it has come to my attention that his personal well-being does not appear to be sufficient. Though he was well informed of such, the third nodded. Please elaborate. Kurenai's brow furrowed. For starters, his regular diet appears to consist mainly of ramen and meals at Ichiraku's. His meals lack the vegetable sort, and I can only assume that it has stunted his physical growth. Another matter that concerns me is she decided that sloppy was not the word to use in front of the village leader. His understanding of taijutsu is rather unfeasible for one who has been put through the standard academy lectures. I understand that, as one who tends to seek trouble, he may not satisfy the average knowledge of ninjutsu and genjutsu, but as taijutsu is a physical portion of the syllabus, I doubt Naruto would lack interest in the subject. She allowed a rueful smile to touch her lips. For all I see, the boy also lacks the ability to sit still. Sarutobi nodded slowly. He knew all of this. Naruto often sought his companionship, having been deprived of the attention of those his age. Sometimes, when the boy was in a talkative mood, he would explain how he had attempted the standard pranks on his Chunin instructor, and when the Hokage prodded carefully, the blonde would unwittingly reveal that his teacher had somehow forgotten to oversee his shuriken practice. In compensation for his subordinate's forgetfulness, the third often accompanied Naruto in his occasional studies. It seemed that it had not been enough, as Kurenai had pointed out. Naruto had been handicapped from the beginning, and it was rather difficult to heal old wounds. Kurenai, he said, and the Jounin raised her gaze to meet his when she sensed a serious tone in his voice. I trust that you would only wish for the best of your student. While I have attempted to lessen Naruto's lack of proper instruction, it appears that I have not altogether been successful. Why didn't you punish the instructors? Kurenai inquired quietly. The third gave a small smile. Though I am reluctant to enforce discipline on my subordinates, I am willing to put the older practices to action if anyone breaches the laws I have set. However, by subtly depriving Naruto of teacher-to-student tutelage, the academy instructors have not broken any laws that are currently in place. The villagers resent Naruto for his uniqueness, and even I do not have the power to change the way they think. Kurenai said nothing, though her eyes had somewhat risen in the crimson shade. A sliver of remembrance filtered into her mind from the previous day. Naruto, tell me, do you feel lonely? It was impossible not to notice the painful grief that had exuded from the boy, or the killing intent that had accompanied it. It had been a very brief lapse of self-control, but Kurenai had felt it. The hairs on the back of her neck had stood on end as the wave of hatred swept by, and she had been grateful that they had not been among the majority of the village population. She had seen Naruto's shoulders tense and clench at a memory that had obviously brought him pain. She had been afraid that Naruto, beneath the layer of controlled grins and laughs, hated those that taunted his existence. But then he had calmed and the moment had moved on for the more positive turns. Kurenai had carefully steered him away from darker thoughts and onto safer ground. It's not like he can be blamed for his less than friendly thoughts, the Jounin thought on a bitter tone. She herself had been enraged at his recollection of his genin years, and it was understandable that Naruto had not been fond of the moment. Kurenai, Sarutobi said, watching her carefully. She snapped her gaze back to him. As you are Naruto's sensei, I leave his welfare in your capable hands. She bowed her head. Yes, Hokage-sama. She glanced at the wall clock behind the Hokage's desk and discovered that she had a little less than 15 minutes to meet her genins. She smiled faintly and wondered if they would knowingly accept the challenge she had silently proposed to them. Excuse me, Lord Hokage, but if there is nothing else I would like to take my leave. I am expected in a short amount of time. It seemed to shatter a spell that had warped into existence. The third leaned back in his armchair, resuming the face of the leaf's strongest shinobi. Yes, I do apologize for keeping you in an old man's company for so long. He smiled at her. I trust it was not an endearing experience. I found it very enlightening, Kurenai replied, smiling in return. She bowed and reached for the handle of the door. And Kurenai? She paused and turned slightly. Please take care of Naruto. She inclined her head in his direction. I will do my best. Sakura brushed back her hair and inspected her reflection in the mirror. What do you think, Akamaru? She asked, bending down to the puppy's level where he sat on her bed. Kiba had insisted that Akamaru stayed with her, so. Without a doubt, he still remembered the last time she had tried to look for their sensei. I don't need the mutt, he'd claimed, and Akamaru had promptly protested indignantly by chewing on the edge of his trouser leg. Besides, if he smells that I'm off mark, Akamaru can come get me. Right, boy? Although she had sputtered her gratitude, much to the interest of an amused Naruto, it didn't begin to cover her relief. Akamaru barked once and Sakura could almost predict his meaning. Kiba's going to beat us there if we don't get going. She laughed and picked him up, plucking a grape for him as she passed the kitchen. Her father had already left for work, and her mother for shopping, so no one was there to wish her a good day and a precaution to keep her clothes clean when Sakura locked her apartment and paused on the doorstep to allow Akamaru to extract his muzzle from her shoulder and sniff around. When it appeared that he had picked up the scent, she let him jump to the ground and lead the way. She lowered her head as she walked, following the white blur that darted ahead of her, expertly weaving between legs in a fashion that Sakura could not have dreamed to imitate. The morning runaround with Kiba and Naruto had forced her to realize that she was severely deficient in her physical abilities. Kiba had been able to keep pace despite his constant complaints and cursing behind his sister's back, and even Naruto seemed not to have been winded after. It had been a test of endurance, and she had failed miserably. Akamaru suddenly growled and left her line of vision. Sakura's head snapped up in time to see a blur streak by the corner of her eye. Akamaru? She blurted, and looked around for the puppy. She did not want to be the one to tell Kiba that she had lost his dog. Much to her relief, Akamaru was standing just a few feet away from her, wagging his tail and glaring in a way only a canine could. He had a small packet clenched in his teeth. Sakura stared. Nice reflexes, pup, a deep voice said to her left. Can't say the same for you, Sakura, was it? She flushed as she turned to bow to the speaker. Good morning, Tanaka-san. The Jounin turned grocer raised a hand in greeting. He chuckled when she attempted to return the paper bag he had thrown. Keep it. It's for you. For me? She asked, surprised. She peered inside to discover that it contained an assortment of sweets. No wonder Akamaru had reacted so quickly, she thought. Remembering her manners, she bowed once again to Tanaka. Thank you, he waved it away. Off to training? That reminded her. Oh. That's right, I have to get going. Sakura decided not to ask Tanaka about the gift. Something about the man didn't quite qualify him for a stranger, although she had only conversed with him once before. Right, Tanaka said. He reached to the side for a crate of apples and threw one to Akamaru, who caught it in mid-tumble. By then, Sakura frowned upon realizing that no shopkeeper in the right state of mind would give away his goods for free. But then, Tanaka Noboru was like no grocer she had ever come across before. Akamaru barked again and Sakura glanced up at the sky. She cringed and realized that she had spent too long talking to Tanaka. She fed an amount of chakra to her legs and took to the rooftops. Hey! Sensei! Kurenai snapped her book shut and leaned over the edge of the branch she had been sitting on to see an orange-clad figure waving his arms up at her. She smiled and slipped the tome into her pouch. You're first again. Naruto grinned and leapt onto the branch above the one his sensei occupied. He sat on the end of it, his legs dangling down, so that he could see Kurenai where she was leaning against the side of the trunk. You made us track you again, he accused. I did, didn't I? But why? A shinobi must be aware of his surroundings and his situation. One cannot immediately assume that answers are automatically supplied. Seeing her pupil's blank expression, Kurenai explained in simpler terms. I don't want you to rely on given information, Naruto. Sometimes you have to notice things on your own and decide on the best course of action. The blonde genin nodded slowly. So you're saying that I should try and figure out things for myself sometimes? Correct. Oh. I get it now, Kurenai nodded. Do you think you can remember it long enough to explain to Kiba and Sakura in your own time? Why can't you tell them yourself, Sensei? Naruto frowned. Even he knew why no one ever asked him to remember anything important. As Kurenai opened her mouth to explain, he waved his hands in front of him. Wait a minute! Don't tell me yet. Let me figure it out myself. His arms crossed over his chest and his lower lip jutting out as if he were pouting. He was, in fact, trying to concentrate. The jounin snapped her mouth shut and complied with a slight smile on her face. Naruto learned his lessons quick. He had undoubtedly fostered his quick thinking during the pranks he pulled. It took sufficient skill to avoid the hot-headed chunins, and sometimes even A and BU, that were dispatched to deal with his antics. Kurenai's expression darkened minimally as her mind swerved toward the better treatment Naruto could have received in the academy. The boy was not, by any chance, lacking in intellect. He was very bright, and Kurenai was displeased to note that he could have learned more from his instructors. The Kurenai-sensei? She looked up. Did you figure it out? Well, yeah, you want me to remember specific information so I can remember the stuff I noticed during missions. Or something like that. Very good, Naruto, she said approvingly. He grinned and rubbed the back of his head. Then his mood regulated and he shifted uncomfortably. Sensei? Kurenai knew instantly that he had a particular matter to address. Neither Kiba nor Sakura had arrived yet, and the jounin diverted the majority of her attention to her present pupil. Yes, what is it? Naruto shuffled about. If I wanted to talk to you, would you listen? She found her eyebrow arcing up, accompanied by a flare of surprise. Of course I would. She narrowed her eyes slightly. Should I not? That's not what I meant, he said quickly, once again waving his hands in front of him. I was just wondering because Irika-sensei was pretty much the only one who would listen to me, and his voice faltered. He told me that teachers always listen to students, he continued in a whisper. And you're my sensei, so I thought. Kurenai's fingers unconsciously curled into a fist, and she had the suddenly longing to land them on a particular group of academy instructors. Naruto, she said in a firm voice, causing him to look into her serious eyes. Yumino Irika was right. I am your sensei. If you have any doubts or feel the need to talk to someone, I want you to know that you can always come to me. And don't forget about your teammates. Is that clear? She asked sternly. He nodded. One last time, Naruto. Being in a team means that you are not alone. Yes, Kurenai-sensei. Satisfied though still fighting off irritation at certain chunins, Kurenai leaned back into the trunk of the tree. Now what was it you wanted to discuss? The corner of his mouth twitched. Me. Before Kurenai could inquire, he went on. I know that there are lots of problems with me. Like you know? Naruto shrugged a little uncomfortable. I could never break out of a genjutsu properly at school. My taijutsu stinks and I only know a few ninjutsu. He paused. And I'm short. Kurenai stared at his candid confession. Well, at least he was honest. Genjutsu is my specialty, and I know that some people are naturally talented at the art, while others cannot perform it at all. Naruto, don't be too concerned about your inability to release yourself from a genjutsu. Dispelling and casting are two different things. Naruto sat up straighter. So you're saying I might be able to do genjutsu? Like, actually do it? As much as she hated to put her foot down on the boy's hopes, Kurenai did not want to encourage him to take down the wrong path. With some difficulty, yes. Seeing him frown at difficulty, the jounin explained. Genjutsu relies on acute manipulation of chakra. With your enormous chakra reserves, you would barely feel the drain, and therefore would distort the illusion. Although Naruto could not honestly say that he had understood everything, he managed to pull out his sensei's primary implication. It's better off if you don't specialize in genjutsu. Sakura would be suitable for genjutsu, Kurenai said thoughtfully. She has very good chakra control. Naruto smiled. Sakura-chan's good at everything, he said ruefully. Not entirely, Kurenai disagreed. Like you, Sakura needs to reinforce her taijutsu. Once I find a suitable tutor, the two of you will be training together under the same sensei. Brief joy at Sakura's future companionship rose, only to be forced back down when he digested the rest of Kurenai's words. You're not going to be the one teaching us? He asked, disappointed. My taijutsu is merely adequate, she said gently. Your skills would improve dramatically if you were under the tutelage of a taijutsu specialist. Naruto nodded, though still slightly let down. So who's going to be teaching us? A grimace pulled on Kurenai's pursed lips. Her appeal to Takara had not gone very well. She had planned to shoot down two birds with one stone. Naruto and Sakura would have a suitable teacher, and Takara would have an incentive to motivate her to do more with her life. Kurenai knew her old friend too well. Anything she tried would not faze her. But maybe a certain Uzumaki Naruto could. Feeling somewhat sly, Kurenai said, Naruto, listen up. He straightened with a grin. Hi, he barked. Do you remember the woman you met yesterday? He cocked his head. The hag? Kurenai cleared her throat. Yes. Her name is Yamane Takara. She is an old friend of mine. I asked her to tutor you in Sakura. By this point, Naruto was bouncing up and down on his branch, and Kurenai retracted her legs in case the bough snapped and fell. So what are we waiting for? He asked eagerly. When can we start? Takara no longer wishes to be associated with the shinobi kind, Kurenai said, feeling a spot of nurtured sadness rise. She refuses to teach you. What? She winced. Naruto, I think I can hear you perfectly fine without you shouting. He clamped his hands over his mouth. Sorry, Sensei, he said, his voice muffled. Do you remember where Takara lives? Naruto cocked his head for a moment. I can ask Kiba, he said finally. I want you to talk to Takara and, if possible, convince her to oversee your taijutsu. I can do that. I know you can, she said, giving him a small smile. Then her expression became serious. If she insists on refusing, I want you to know when to stop. Forcing others to do something they don't want to do will only cause both sides pain. Do you understand? Hi. I'll be good. Kurenai hid a smile. Despite his intentions, she wondered how good Naruto could be. Is there anything else you would like to discuss? He thought for a moment, and shook his head. No, then let's get down to the ground. Kiba and Sakura should be here soon. They had to wait only a few minutes. Kurenai curiously noted that Kiba had allowed Sakura to borrow Akamaru. The Jounin knew from experience that Inuzuka clansmen were fiercely loyal to those that earned their friendship. The knowledge that Kiba would look out for his teammates brought with it a certain comfort. Kurenai was relying on him to act as a leader figure. Naruto would also suffice for the role, but he had to learn to be silent and observe before he was suitable. Both the boys were competitive, and Kurenai found herself hoping that it would not come to blows. A quick debriefing followed. The newcomers looked inquisitively at Naruto when Kurenai told them that he had something to explain to them. Naruto was momentarily unsettled by the attention but quickly overcame it, and relayed the message with surprisingly accuracy, albeit minced with his own interpretations. After informing her students to report to the current training ground each morning, Kurenai set Kiba and Naruto on a taijutsu spar against each other. Sakura stood with Kurenai by the sidelines. The Jounin watched the match and analyzed the two combatants. Naruto was accustomed to stealth and the ability to avoid pursuers, and this seemed to put Kiba's patience to test. The blonde's unpredictability allowed him to constantly put his opponent on guard, but being more experienced, Kiba managed to maintain the upper hand. Watching Naruto grin as he rose after being knocked to the ground, shaking his head, Sakura found herself doubting his nature. He wasn't very different from Kiba, if she thought about it. The realization frustrated her. She couldn't even come to terms with her own judgment, and she expected herself to be able to work with these people for years to come. Kurenai-sensei? She asked tentatively, looking up at the Jounin. Yes, Sakura? The tone in Sakura's voice reminded Kurenai of her previous discussion with Naruto. She wondered if she would once again have to play counselor. The girl hesitated. Oh, to hell with pride. Sensei, I think I'm not being particularly friendly to Naruto, and well, I don't know why. She shuffled uncomfortably from leg to leg as if awaiting punishment. Kurenai raised an eyebrow. It took courage to confess to something like that. Go on, she encouraged. It had felt like a good idea at the time, but Sakura already regretted speaking up at all. It was too late to pull out now. Well, whenever he fools around, I want to hit him. But lately I've been thinking that maybe, I don't even know the difference between what's stupid and what's not. It feels like I'm not even giving him a chance, and she bit her lip. And it doesn't feel like I'm treating him like a teammate. Kurenai watched the spar as she took a moment to absorb her student's words. Naruto was having the worst possible time landing a blow, but he was barely winded, whereas Kiba was starting to slow down. Do you know why you feel that way? Naruto seems to like you very much, she said lightly. Sakura blushed, and she twisted the hem of her dress. I thought it was his crush on me at first, she admitted. I thought that was why he was so annoying, but then I thought that it wasn't right. She paused. I mean, I like Sasuke and I know I annoy him sometimes, but he doesn't hit me when I'm drooling over him. She did not realize that she had said it aloud until Kurenai chuckled. Very perceptive, the Jounin noted. Sakura turned bright red and lowered her head to the point that she could see her chin. Sakura. She hesitantly raised her head to see Kurenai's kind smile. As sensei, what do you think of Naruto? What I think? Sakura watched him sweep a low kick at Kiba only to look up a moment later in time to catch a mouthful of the latter's foot. He landed heavily on his behind. He's an idiot, she said slowly. But he's not too bad. He wanted to treat us to ramen this morning. Did you accept? She lowered her head again. Not today. I was really dirty after the run and I wanted to take a shower before training. But I told him that he could treat us tomorrow, because he looked kind of sad. Kurenai nodded. That was very considerate of you, Sakura. But sensei, why does everyone hate him? Yesterday at the restaurant. Thankfully at that moment Kiba was knocked back by a solid kick from Naruto, and it gave Kurenai an excuse to avoid answering Sakura's question. She called for the end of the match. Naruto was panting hard, but he looked very satisfied and was grinning. Kiba ruefully brushed himself off and offered to pull the shorter boy to his feet. Kurenai sparred briefly with Sakura to allow the boys to rest. When the pink-haired girl appeared to be winded, which did not take long, the Jounin allowed her to join her teammates on the sidelines. Sakura eventually pulled out a small bag of sweets and divided them up among the 3 genins and Akamaru. She smiled a little when they enthusiastically thanked her. Watching them, Kurenai knew that Sakura did not hate Naruto. Many children's attitudes toward Naruto were influenced by that of the adults around them. The older generation of Konoha wanted the young demon container dead, but as that was a crime in itself, they resorted to subtle forms of abhorrence behind the boy's back. The children had picked up this resentment from their parents' disapproval, leaving Naruto friendless. Sakura would have to learn to deal with her own judgment, and not follow those already set out for her. Kiba seemed impartial, but Kurenai knew better than to think that he did not dwell deeply on his thoughts. Books should not be judged by their cover. When Team 8 reported to the Hokage Tower for a mission, Naruto and Kiba boldly refused to hunt for Tora the cat again. Amused, Kurenai let them have their way. Sharing her teammates' sentiment, Sakura negotiated with the Chunin on duty for another mission. She and the boys collectively decided on a mission to repair a bridge. The overpass had collapsed a couple of days ago, and a group of housewives complained that there was not enough space for everyone to wash their clothes on only one side of the stream. Kurenai inspected the bridge upon arriving. Most of it was still intact, but the gaping absence of several logs of wood in the center of the bridge was wide enough to be a bother. The structure was fairly simple, a mass of logs bound together by several ropes and suspended above the running stream. They would need to cut down a tree or two. "This is gonna be easy," Naruto boasted, and leaped over to the other side. "Let's get started already." Kurenai smiled faintly at her student's enthusiasm. "First, we'll need logs. Kiba and Akamaru, I'm putting you in charge of that," she directed. "Naruto, send some clones to carry the logs here. Measure the length required and cut them up accordingly. Sakura, come with me and I'll show you how to bind the rope." Kiba grumbled as he slid back the sleeves of his jacket. "Maybe we should have chosen something else." "Come on, lazy!" Naruto shouted from across the narrow lake. "We can go grab another mission after this one." "It also depends how quickly you can get this finished," Kurenai minded. After all, taking too long means that there might not be any other missions left except the cat one. She let a rare grin slide into her expression. "But the last time I checked, Kiba, you and Tora were getting on quite well." "Perhaps," Kiba looked appalled. "Actually, fixing a bridge isn't so bad," he said hastily. "Come on, Akamaru." "Kiba," Kurenai called after him. "Yeah? Watch out for splinters." "Will do." She paused, and then in a voice loud enough for Naruto, added, "If we have spare time I'll teach you a basic skill that will make learning new techniques easier." Naruto grinned widely. He liked the sound of that. He wanted to learn some cool and powerful and explosive. He cackled inwardly. "Any, can you teach us how to make things go bang one day, Kurenai-sensei?" "I don't even want to imagine what you'll do with that," she sighed. Sakura didn't either. "Sensei's not going to teach us anything if you keep wasting time, Naruto," she told him. "Get working already, Yash. Kage bunshin no jutsu. One more miso ramen, Aji-san." Naruto called loudly to Ichiraku Tuchi. Blinking, Kiba counted the number of empty bowls stacked in front of the happy eater. "Remind me never to take you here if it's ever my turn to treat." "Yeah, well, I'm hungry." "That long run had me beat." "It had me beat too," Sakura pointed out dryly. "You don't see me shoveling food in my mouth." "Hey, I got up early to practice that tree thingy as well." The pink-haired girl blinked. "You still haven't gotten the hang of it?" Naruto just grinned sheepishly. Tuchi placed a steaming bowl in front of his favorite customer. "Don't worry about it, Naruto. You'll get it under your belt eventually. Nothing's impossible." He smiled as Naruto grinned back at him, and then dove into his 8th bowl. Sakura edged away slightly to avoid getting bowled over by Naruto's quick arm movements. She thought the tree-walking exercise was actually quite basic and easy to grasp. It had taken her a few times to calculate the correct amount of chakra to apply to her feet, and keep it flowing steadily as she ran up the tree trunk. On the other hand, Kurenai had told her that she happened to have intense chakra control, so she couldn't even imagine how hard it was to Naruto. Kiba had also taken a few tumbles, and if Sakura recalled correctly, he hadn't progressed more than 15 feet, with Naruto mustering a mere 8. Meanwhile, Kiba gloated. "I can do it 10 times in a row without a hitch. Awesome, aren't I?" Naruto pouted. "Ah man. So it's only me that can't do it? That's so not fair." Sakura raised an eyebrow. 10 times, Kiba? How tall was the tree? "For your information, it was taller than the one me and Akamaru cut down yesterday," he boasted. "Uh-huh. And what did you have to do to get Hana-san to help you?" "Not much. Just have to wash." Kiba stopped and slapped his forehead. "Ah, damn it," Sakura smirked. She was starting to see the joys of teasing someone, instead of being on the receiving end. After the meal, Naruto took out a green, frog-shaped wallet and put it on display for his companions. "Meet Gamachan, guys." "Gamachan," Kiba said in a monotone, the corner of his mouth twitching. "You have a flair for naming things, Naruto." "Really? I think so too." Sakura was slightly mortified to notice that paying for the meal had almost depleted Gamachan's contents. It was no secret that Naruto was an orphan and lived off the allowance he received from the village's support network. Given how many bowls of ramen he had consumed, he was in no position to be paying for his teammates. So why did he look so happy? At that moment Naruto turned his head to give her a curious look, as if he had felt her gaze on him. Did you like Ichiraku's Sakura-chan? She wondered if anything short of a positive answer would embarrass him. She didn't want him to feel obliged to take them to a higher-class restaurant. With a vague smile, she said, the teriyaki ramen was nice. He gave her a bright grin. There was a noticeable spring in his step. He suddenly remembered. Akiba? Yeah? What's up? You know that creepy woman from a couple of days ago? Sensei's old teammate? Kiba cocked his head. What about her? Naruto grinned sheepishly. Asking for a favor tended to paint one side of a person with embarrassment. Well, Kurenai-sensei told me that she was going to get her to teach me and Sakura some taijutsu and… Really? Sakura interrupted hopefully. Yeah, but she doesn't want to teach us. Seeing Sakura's shoulders slump dejectedly, Naruto vowed that, no matter what it took, he would get Yamane Takara to teach them. Kiba frowned. That's not very nice. Let's go nag her. Naruto blinked. What now? We have to meet up with Kurenai-sensei in half an hour. We'll be back by then, the taller boy said confidently. With a single swipe that somehow managed to hook onto both his teammates, he dragged them after Akamaru, who had bounded ahead to lead the way. She blamed Kurenai. Ah, come on, hag. Good deeds give you less wrinkles, Naruto. I don't think that's helping very much. Come on, come on. It's not nice to leave someone in need. Please? Yes, she blamed Kurenai. Shut up. Takara erupted. It worked. For 10 seconds, the boy dressed in outrageous orange frowned. Why won't you teach us? He asked. He pulled out a chair and raised a leg onto it, hoping to intimidate the woman. Naruto! Sakura hissed. That's rude. For once in his life, Naruto ignored his Sakura-chan. Takara put down her cup and raised her head to meet his gaze. Her dark eyes were ominous. Naruto swallowed, but kept his somewhat dominating position. Slowly, her hand raised and a finger crooked toward herself. Warily, Naruto leaned in. Behind him, Kiba and Sakura held their breath. Akamaru huddled in his master's jacket, only the tip of his nose sticking out. What? Naruto said uncertainly. Their faces were barely an inch apart, their foreheads almost touching. She slammed her head into his with such force that he was knocked back against the wall. Kiba yelled angrily. Sakura caught Naruto by the arms when he staggered into her and tried to steady him. That hurt, he said dazedly. His hitayate had been knocked off and his brow was bruised. What the hell was that for? Kiba demanded furiously. Naruto mumbled something under his breath and pulled away from Sakura, surprising the girl. She would have thought that he would appreciate the close contact she had allowed him. Instead, he snatched his forehead protector off the floor and retied it around his head, all the while glaring at Takara. What have you got against us? He scowled. You blondie, Takara drawled, dangling an empty cup by the tips of her fingers. Why did you become a shinobi? Naruto drew back. Eh? He raised a clenched fist. To become Hokage, of course. I'm gonna be the strongest ninja in this village. She stared at him. And then she laughed. The genin was taken aback. What's wrong with you? She continued to laugh. Sakura fidgeted uncomfortably. Why did Kurenai-sensei want this woman to be their taijutsu teacher? There was something about Yamane Takara, something dark and bitter, that unsettled her. Despite appearances, Yamane Takara was dangerous. Not that it made Sakura feel any better. Let's go, she said quietly, tugging at both Naruto's and Kiba's jackets. The boys turned, both glaring, but their gaze softened when they noticed exactly how uncomfortable their teammate was to remain in the older woman's presence. Sakura continued in a mumble. We only have 10 minutes left, let's not make Kurenai-sensei wait. Sakura and Naruto turned back to Takara. Fine. We're leaving, but don't think you've won. As they walked away from the woman, he tossed the last comment over his shoulder. You're just scared to teach the future Hokage. Takara blinked, but he was gone. What, you scared, Takara? Her eyes widened as Masura's voice echoed in her head. Grunting, Takara knocked the sake bottles off the table. They broke with a crash, chipped glass ricocheting into the dark corners. She dully watched one of the chipped cups spin on the floor. Silence had barely settled when Takara abruptly pivoted and sent her fist smashing into the wall behind her. The aged partition split with cracks, shaking the very structure of the building. Many heaving breaths later, Takara extracted her hand from the crater she had crushed and calmly bandaged her bloody knuckles. Kurenai was skeptical when her genins arrived at the training ground, strangely subdued. She set the boys to the basic chakra control exercise she had showed them the previous day. As soon as she turned to Sakura, Kiba and Naruto raced competitively for the trees, and Kurenai knew she did not have to worry about them. She took her remaining student aside to the lake behind the clearing. From what she had seen, Sakura was ready to advance to the next stage. She demonstrated the walking on water exercise and supervised Sakura until she made progress. When she checked back on the boys, Kurenai did not know whether to be surprised or pleased when she discovered that Naruto had managed to reach one of the higher branches where he had still been struggling to get far off the ground only the day before. His mouth was closed in a grin, determined slash, and the Jounin noticed that Kiba frequently glanced at his teammate with an unreadable emotion in his eyes. It did not take a genius to come to the conclusion that something was bothering her team. Kurenai returned to Sakura to find that the girl was already rising off the water's surface. Only the hem of her dress had been soaked, and it appeared to be drying already. Kurenai leaned against one of the trees in the background and silently observed her student's progress. Sakura barely noticed the water lapping against her toes. The chakra exercise Kurenai-sensei had showed her was basically a more difficult variation of the tree-walking exercise. The main objective was to gather chakra at the feet and maintain the flow even against the water's roiling surface. It was surprisingly difficult. Her concentration was filled with holes. Her mind refused to turn away from the confrontation with Yamane Takara. Sakura was aware that, while her chakra control was above average, she did not particularly excel at anything else. Her only talent lay in genjutsu. Her arsenal of ninjutsu did not extend past academy level, and her taijutsu she didn't even want to start on her taijutsu. If she did not improve, could she even qualify as a kunoichi? Sakura. Kurenai's voice almost threw Sakura into the wavering arms of the lake. Shaken, the genin turned slowly to the shore. Why yes, sensei? Get off the water. Sakura frowned. Did Kurenai not think that she was capable? But then she checked her chakra reserves and discovered that they barely scraped the minimum. Mortified, Sakura padded carefully to land. She did not realize that she had exerted such a large portion of her chakra. The effect became painfully clear when she heaved herself onto the grass. Her legs buckled beneath her. A pair of hands gripped her shoulders, and Sakura looked up to see Kurenai staring down at her. That was dangerous, Sakura, the Jounin said quietly. If I hadn't been watching, you would have suffered from chakra exhaustion and possibly drowned. Sakura winced. I'm sorry, sensei. I was distracted and didn't notice that her babble was cut off as Kurenai eased her to the ground and placed a cool hand on her forehead. Sakura felt her mind settle and remained down until she felt the burning in her hara ebb away. I think I feel better now, sensei. Kurenai helped her student sit up. I thought you would have had the common sense to monitor your chakra levels, she said wryly, a small smile touching her lips as the genin's shoulders fell with disappointment. It appears that I misjudged your abilities, Sakura. Would you rather spend more time on the tree-walking exercise? No, Sakura said quickly. Then, realizing that she had practically shouted her disagreement, she lowered her head and mumbled an apology. Kurenai raised an eyebrow. Sakura, I didn't think that I would need to tell you this the way I had to Naruto, but it seems that you don't understand my role as your Jounin instructor. She blinked in confusion. What do you mean? Kurenai lowered herself to sit beside her pupil, her legs crossed. I am not here merely to supervise. I am your mentor. It is my responsibility to oversee your growth and help you along when you need guidance. That means you can talk to me. She looked into the girl's wide eyes. Are we on the same page? She nodded. It amused as much as confused Kurenai to realize that Naruto and Sakura were strangely alike. Sakura turned her gaze to the lake, her eyes glazing over in thought as she pulled her legs to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. Sensei, she said hesitantly in a small voice. Do you think I'm weak? Definitely not. It failed to make her feel better, but it did relieve her of a certain burden. Kurenai-sensei had no problem with her being a minor hindrance, and Sakura's fears of being booted off the team were erased. But Kurenai-sensei, if your role is as our mentor, then what is mine? Kurenai's brow furrowed. Sakura looked lost. Your role, Sakura, she said gently, resting a hand on the girl's shoulder, is as a tactician. Sakura turned to her with a perplexed expression on her face. Naruto's and Kiba's strengths lie in offense, but there is more to a fight than just brute strength, the red-eyed woman explained patiently. Sakura, your understanding of the field and ability to observe an opponent is a great asset. You can guide your team from danger and be their commander when they need you. But that's your job, Sakura said hurriedly. I wouldn't think to replace you, the Jounin smiled deprecatingly. Shinobi do not stay in teams forever. Understand that the risks of being a Jounin are exceptionally higher than those of the average shinobi. You have to be prepared to be faced with a situation where I may not be there to lead you. You have to learn to survive in your own. Kurenai-sensei. Sakura gasped in horror. Life does not last, Sakura. We're only human. The people you meet will not always be there. Kurenai paused to allow her words to sink in. Of course, there will also be occasions where the three of you will be sent on missions without me, especially when you become Chunin. When that happens, I am relying on you to keep the boys alive. You know how thoughtless they can be. Sakura took the hand the Jounin offered her, and allowed herself be pulled to her feet. They walked back to the training ground and found Naruto dashing recklessly up a tree, the trunk scarred by many cuts. Kiba watched his progress from the topmost branch and sniggered heartlessly when Naruto somehow managed to lose a sandal, yelped, and fell. A team where careless teammates needed her guidance, where she needed their protection, where their sensei, their mentor, taught her students about life itself. A team where one's survival could depend almost entirely on the actions and decisions of another. Sakura could get used to that. Ah, Naruto. Tucci leaned over the counter to converse with his favorite customer. How was your day, boy? Naruto grinned. It was good. We got given this mission to walk this wild pack of dogs, and there was this big mutt that almost dragged me into an electric fence. But lucky Akamaru got him to turn around, or I would have been toast." The owner of the ramen stand levered himself off the counter to prepare the regular ramen for his customer. "That's not quite the life-risking mission I had in mind." "Do ninja these days really graduate to walk dogs?" Naruto shook his head. "Kurenai-sensei says that these missions are important too," he told Tsuchi, with a small hint of defensiveness on his sensei's behalf. "She told me that these missions help us work together better, and that when we're strong enough, we'll be taking missions outside the village." It was not until he noticed Iam's wide-eyed stare that he realized that he had perhaps spoken a little fiercely. He winced and bowed his head to Tsuchi and his daughter, shamefacedly awaiting his punishment. Ichiraku's was pretty much the only restaurant in the village that was willing to serve the demon fox's container, and Naruto feared that he had blown it again. But Tsuchi was smiling when he laid a steaming bowl of ramen in front of the boy. "It seems to me that you and your sensei are getting on very well, HM?" Naruto, relieved, could only grin. "Yeah," he said, his voice rising in its usual confidence and loudness. "Kurenai-sensei is nice." A plate of steamed vegetables and several slices of beef caught his eye as he reached for his chopsticks. He looked up questioningly at Tsuchi. "I didn't order this," he said, nudging the plate forward. Tsuchi pushed it back toward him. "It's yours," he assured. His young customer frowned, and Tsuchi made a small gesture. "Your sensei came by earlier and told me that she was concerned with your height," he grinned, and the boy's eyes widened. "So from now on, my job is to make sure you eat your vegetables and enough meat. Ramen is good, but it thankfully isn't the only thing this old man is capable of making. But she's already paid enough to keep you fed for a season. You'll still be paying for the ramen, though." Tsuchi watched the blonde, who was staring at his meal with a mixture of emotions that the man had never before seen on the boy's face. "You have one hell of a sensei, Naruto," he added, and whispered a silent word of gratitude to the woman. It was about time the poor boy found someone who cared. After a long pause, Naruto slowly picked up his chopsticks and started to eat. Yuhi Kurenai was new to mentoring a genin team, so she could only assume that it was normal for a student to pay his sensei a visit during the night. She raised an eyebrow when she opened her front door to reveal the subdued genin. It had started drizzling lightly a little while ago, and she wondered if her home had been sought as shelter. But then she realized that it was not the sort of thing Naruto would do. After managed to convince him out of his damp jacket, she sat him down in front of the blazing fireplace to warm. Then she went to the kitchen to make tea for the two of them. She knew he was standing behind her, waiting, before she turned to open the cupboard. "I went to Ichiraku's." Kurenai nodded and took out a packet of tea bags. He raised his head to look up at her, his gaze somewhat forlorn. "Why?" he asked quietly, biting his lower lip. "I don't get it. Why would you do this for me?" Naruto's words were infused with so many unreadable emotions that Kurenai took a long while to compose her reply. She settled on, "I'm supposed to look after you." Naruto frowned. "So were those guys at the orphanage," he muttered, his hands curling into tense fists. "So were the instructors at the academy. So were my parents." He was too distracted to notice Kurenai stiffen. "But they didn't," he continued, looking at her although her back was turned to him. "They were supposed to look after me. Why didn't they? Why would you? I don't understand." She stuck a kettle under the gushing tap and placed it on the stove to heat. Then she turned around to face her student. "What don't you understand, Naruto?" she asked softly. She was saddened that a simple friendly gesture would reveal just how broken the boy was beneath his smiles, just how unwilling he was to invest in trust. "Everything," he burst out. "I've got the damned nine-tailed." He broke off abruptly, his eyes wide with horror. Kurenai reached out and patted his shoulder. "I know, Naruto," she said. Naruto nodded numbly. His voice had abandoned him, along with the usual dismay that revealing his true identity brought him. He was too confused. "Naruto, look at me," Kurenai said firmly, and he did. "Some people hate you for what you imprison for their well-being. They are fools. They are shallow-minded fools who do not understand that the Yondaime was not the only hero that day." Awestruck, Naruto's mouth popped open. "Do you consider me shallow-minded?" He shook his head quickly. "Of course not, Sensei. I would hope not," she smiled dryly. "You asked me why I felt obliged to look after you. Do I need more reason other than the fact that you are my student? I don't think." She never managed to finish her sentence, because Naruto chose that exact moment to fling himself at her and wrap his arms tightly around her waist. Kurenai staggered back in surprise, trying to remember anything from her years as a kunoichi that would help her deal with an emotional genin. The only instinct she had to comfort the boy was to hug him back, one hand rubbing soothing circles on his back and the other gently ruffling the back of his hair. It seemed to be enough for Naruto, who suddenly felt like the little brother that she had never had. The kettle screeched somewhere behind them and Kurenai absently flicked it off, but the moment had already been disrupted. Naruto hastily pulled away, embarrassed beyond words. Then, when he hesitantly raised his gaze to see Kurenai's raised eyebrows and small smile, he carefully translated his expression into a shy grin. Over tea, Kurenai was regaled with his history of witty pranks, which she gently warned disapproval of. Embarrassed yet somewhat pleased, Naruto rubbed the back of his head and grinned. "How about you tell me how you found my address?" I'm curious. Oh, that was easy. Naruto sounded flippant. I just had to ask Iruka-sensei. I saw before that he had this bunch of files about this year's genin teams, so I thought I'd ask him if I could see it. Kurenai raised an eyebrow. And he let you? Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head, and it told her all she needed to know. He even cringed slightly, but he soon learned that the Jounin was more amused than livid. So he quickly relayed how his immaculate disguise had allowed him to transform briefly into Yumino Iruka and enter the academy's staff room. They didn't catch you? Kurenai was slightly baffled. For a genin to have fooled an entire room of Chunin was rare. Nope. I even sat down for half an hour and did some work for him, he said, grinning. It would have looked weird if I went in, looked at some stuff and then went out again. Kurenai felt that she needed to see this for herself. Show me your transformation jutsu, Naruto. Remembering the parting words of advice Iruka had given her, she added dryly. Of your academy teacher. Nothing else. Naruto only grinned. He wouldn't have dared to try pulling off his Oiroke no jutsu on Kurenai. He formed the hand seals and concentrated. Henge, Kurenai continued to blink long after the smoke had dispersed. Now standing on her doorstep was one Iruka Yumino, looking slightly disheveled as if he had just tamed a horde of little devils. He even had a slight tear in his vest to suggest that he had been a little slow to pick up his students' intentions during weapons class. A small, polite smile completed the convincing doppelganger. Kurenai was mildly impressed. Had she not been a genjutsu specialist, Naruto's impersonation would definitely have fooled her from a short distance away. If Naruto had decided to show up on her doorstep in this guise, she might not have recognized him right away. I can see how you managed to trick the other teachers, she approved. Yumino Iruka vanished, to be replaced by a grinning Naruto. You sure you don't want to see my other jutsu, sensei? He asked cheekily. She stared pointedly at him. Just joking. Sakura-chan would kill me if I used that again. Kurenai poured more tea into both of their cups. Sakura came to talk to me yesterday. About you. Naruto looked surprised. Me? Then he stared down at his feet. Did she say she didn't want to be on a team with me? He mumbled. Kurenai blinked. That had come uncalled for. No. Why would you think that? Well, I know she wanted to be on a team with Sasuke, and she was really mad when she realized that I was on her team instead. She's not happy about it, and she always hits me, so I thought, yeah. I see. Have you realized that she is also bothered by her attitude toward you? His sensei asked. What does that mean? Naruto frowned. Kurenai sighed. Sakura is not hostile by nature. I would hazard a guess that she does not make quite as big a point of making fun of you when certain people are not nearby. Like Sasuke, the genin said dryly. The stuck-up bastard was all Sakura would ever talk about when Naruto, on Kami's whim of luck, managed to strike up conversation with her. It was always Sasuke this and Sasuke that. Except for the occasions when Naruto managed to slip in an insult of the Uchiha in the midst of getting pummeled. Then it would be Naruto this and Naruto that. But even then it didn't last. Nodding, Kurenai continued to say, Sakura told me that she feels that she is not treating you like a teammate. Naruto's head shot up. She did? He asked incredulously. Does that surprise you? Kurenai did not wait for an answer she knew she would not receive. I know that you have more potential than you let on, Naruto. You hide it by constantly drawing attention to yourself, but this in itself sometimes irritates those around you. Like Sakura, for example. She could see that her student was contemplating deeply on her words. I understand why you want to impress others, but it might be time for you to realize that there are other ways to do that. Naruto fidgeted. He knew he wasn't in trouble, but it didn't lessen his discomfort any. Everything Kurenai had pointed out was true. Maybe he had unknowingly worsened the village's opinions of him. So what should I do, Kurenai-sensei? He asked finally, looking up at his mentor for the guidance that he knew she was so adept at providing. The Jounin put her cup down. You should act like yourself and not an idiot. You should know better than I do what attracts trouble and Sakura's irritation. You need to earn the respect. He nodded, eagerly filing away the advice. Kurenai paused to gather her thoughts, wondering how she should phrase what she was about to say next. Sensing that there was more to come, Naruto waited. She ultimately decided not to mince her words. Try not to hold Sakura's actions against her, she told him in a soft voice. I don't think I understand, Naruto ended up admitting after almost a minute of silence. Kurenai had expected him to. I believe you know of the third Hokage's law regarding your prisoner, she said quietly. The tension in his jaw indicated that he did. His law prevents the public from discussing the demon inside you. It is only effective to an extent. There are many ways to reflect emotions without expressing them out loud. Many of the villagers who remember the incident 12 years ago have become parents. Although their children do not know the truth, they look toward the adults to set examples. Kiba treats you normally because his family do not discriminate you. Sakura comes from a family that possibly does. She has unconsciously picked up her parents' views. They are not her own. Naruto visibly winced. Don't worry, Kurenai-sensei. I'd never be mad at Sakura-chan for anything. Kurenai reached over and ruffled his hair, smiling. But you should also keep something else in mind. A relationship without disagreements will not last. You'll understand someday. Over the weeks, Team 8 fell into a routine of clearing 2 missions a day. Each morning was dedicated to briefings and training. At first, the idea of sitting through more lectures did not appeal to the genins, particularly the males. But they quickly learned that Kurenai hardly ever had anything mundane up her sleeve. Naruto learned this the hard way, and quickly resolved to follow the Naruto code of surviving training sessions. Never challenge your sensei to a race on water the day directly after you manage to stay above the surface for more than 2 minutes. Kurenai was satisfied, if not extremely pleased, with her students' growth. She regularly worked with Sakura and Naruto on their taijutsu forms. Takara refused to offer her expertise regardless of the number of times she had discovered Naruto on her doorstep. But Kurenai knew that the boy did not give up too easily. Under her supervision, Naruto gradually developed a form that was solid enough to land steady blows. He still had trouble defending, but he had definitely improved since his first demonstration. Sakura, on the other hand, had near-perfect understanding of the standard taijutsu form, so Kurenai tried to coax her into relying more on her instincts. Hopefully, it would also develop an understanding of using force, which the girl unfortunately lacked. Kiba often assisted in his teammates' taijutsu sessions, humoring Kurenai when he and Naruto once took a spar onto the lake's surface. Sakura's attitude toward Naruto had also evened out, though the blonde was not spared the occasional elbow to the gut. Confiding in Kurenai seemed to have broadened the girl's perspective. Being the neutral connection between his teammates, Kiba could notice slight changes between the two. For one, Naruto was quieter and more focused, which at first had confused both his teammates, but they soon came to respect his concentration and input. Sakura was also easier to approach, and Akamaru very much enjoyed the sweets that she brought to training every day. But as Kiba soon learned, good times were not to last. Naruto struck forward with a curled fist, swiping at Kiba's head. The Inuzuka blocked the first blow and dodged the next with a grin. The two circled each other until the taller boy gestured for Naruto to come on. With a grunt, Naruto threw himself into it, jabbing at the waist and, when Kiba darted back to avoid contact, followed it up with a backhand that swept a momentum forward for his left arm. Surprised by his opponent's swift adaptation, Kiba raised a block. Naruto spun around and, pivoting on his hip and left leg, completed the turn with a roundhouse kick which tapped Kiba's forearm, signifying a hit. Gotcha, the blonde grinned. His eyes widened when Kiba twisted and began to gyrate in movements that his opponent recognized in his piercing fang. Naruto was slow to evade, and although the fingers only brushed against his sleeve, he knew that Kiba could have hit him if the latter had not held back. On the last spin, Kiba struck out an arm to the ground and flipped himself up and over his sparring partner, landing on his feet. He tucked his hood over his head as he turned to sling an arm around Naruto's shoulders. "What did you think of that?" he asked with a cocky tone. "You got me," the blonde admitted. "But I'll get you next time." Kiba held out his hand, palm facing skywards. "Deal." Naruto slapped it. "Good offense, both of you," Kurenai said when the two joined her and Sakura in the shade. "A little work on your blocking though." "Hi!" Sakura knew that this applied to her as well. Their morning runs around the village had reinforced her endurance, but she could not put enough strength behind her blocks or blows to make them significantly count. Admittedly, Naruto was faring off better than she was. The blonde seemed to be improving rapidly these days, throwing himself headfirst into whatever Kurenai-sensei introduced. Sakura wondered how long it would take before the gap between their capabilities widened and she was left behind. "Nez-sensei," Naruto said after he had gulped down a large mouthful of water. Only Sakura had the common sense to prepare for proper training out of the genins, and she was thankfully willing to share her resources. "Can you teach me that thing Kiba did? Why don't you try asking him instead?" Kurenai suggested. But before he could, she added in, "I was hoping this would not come up so soon, but Naruto, Sakura." "Yes, sensei? It appears that I have taught you all I can on the basic taijutsu," the jounin said, and felt a flurry of remorse when their mouths dropped open. "But sensei," Sakura protested, "you are still much stronger than we are." Kurenai shook her head regretfully. "My skills come from experience. That is where I get my intuition to fight from. While some specialists can teach you this initiative, I cannot. If it were genjutsu, I would probably be able to, but taijutsu is not my forte. The only thing I can provide you with now is the time to practice." Naruto absorbed all of this with frightening intellectual understanding. "Isn't there anyone else who can teach us?" Kurenai needlessly replied Takara. There was no mistaking the drop in the mood as they walked toward the Hokage Tower. Kiba glanced at his teammates, finding both of them peculiarly subdued. Naruto looked deep in thought, but not altogether downright upset. The Inuzuka had figured by now that hardly anything that could get to the short blonde for long, and even then, he rarely let his disappointment last. Sakura, on the other hand, was being unnaturally secluded. Even though she walked with them, Kiba could not help but see his teammate as if she were standing on the other side of a thick pane of glass. Akamaru whimpered, "You'd better cheer her up or else." The puppy had come to appreciate his master's companions. Naruto was persistent enough with his antics to be interesting, and Sakura was plain nice. Akamaru did not like it when those who cared about him were upset. It wasn't like Kiba needed to be told twice. He nudged Naruto and meaningfully jerked his head. The two of them slowed their pace to match Sakura's, walking on either side of her. She lifted her head to acknowledge their presence, but it wasn't long before she fell back into staring at her hands, which were clasped in front of her. Predictably, it was Naruto who succumbed to the silence first. "Ano-sa, what's wrong, Sakura-chan?" Sakura smiled faintly at the boys, automatically brushing off the arm that Naruto tried to slip around her with practiced ease. "Nothing's wrong." It was easy to tell that she was lying. "Peace? Quiet?" Who was she kidding? The pounding on the door strengthened. "Open up! We need to talk to you." Now, with a growl, Takara scooped a cup off the table and flung it at the door. The sheer vigor at which she threw it crushed a hole in the wood. On the other side, Kiba grabbed Naruto by the back of his collar and pulled him back just as a cup punctured through the door, showering them with splinters. The cup shattered in midair. Kiba stared at the glass fragments on the ground. "Shit," he whistled in minor appreciation. Akamaru whimpered. "Hell, Naruto, if she ever agrees to teach you, you just gotta show me what she teaches you." "Right," Naruto retorted. He was rubbing his neck, where the tip of his zipper had briefly choked him when Kiba had pulled him back. "First we've got to get her to get off that lazy ass and teach us." He yelled the last part into the puncture in the door, and promptly got another cup lodged in his mouth. "MHMMPH." The orange-clad boy gagged. He fell backward, tugging futilely at the object in his mouth. It had been inserted bottom first, so when Kiba looked down at his teammate, all he saw was a white ceramic indentation that had him rolling over and laughing. Only Akamaru attempted to free Naruto's tongue, but his endeavors were not keeping the boy's face any drier. "What are you doing down there, brat?" Naruto glared up at Takara. "Ma'am," the woman barked out a laugh. Kiba scrambled over to his teammate, and grabbing the other boy under the arms, dragging him backward. There was no telling that Kurenai-sensei's old teammate wouldn't try to eat them. Akamaru stood his ground in front of the boys, yipping. Takara shook her head. "You brats. Didn't Kurenai teach you any manners?" Kiba finally resorted to thumping Naruto extremely hard in the back. The cup came tumbling out, lolling to one side by Takara's feet. Naruto coughed and glared at the woman. "You hag," him thought so. She turned and walked back into her house, but not before flicking her heel and somehow managed to send the fallen cup smashing against Naruto's forehead protector. Kiba winced as his teammate was sent tumbling back again. Naruto was beginning to get fed up. He flung his head from side to side and stared into Takara's rundown apartment. She was sitting at the table, pouring herself another cup of sake. He stormed right in. He pointed an accusing finger, quivering with anger, at Takara. "You! Are you going to teach us taijutsu or not?" "No." "Why not?" She glanced at him, frowning. "For the 10th and last time, kid, I don't want to have anything to do with the ninja kind anymore. You've been bugging me for 2 weeks now. Can't you just leave a lady alone?" Kiba crossed his arms over his chest. "I don't see why you don't want to teach them," he said. "Naruto tells me that you do nothing but drink sake all day. You could be using this time teach them, you know." Takara sipped from her cup and ignored him. "Hey! I'm talking to you," Naruto frowned. "This woman Kiba. You damn, huh?" "What, Naruto? I forgot to bring sake for the hag today. Do you think you could run down and get some for me?" Any genius could have detected the change of tone in Naruto's voice. It was low, solemn, and silently demanding. Although Kiba was not one to take orders, he knew when to back off. With a low whistle to Akamaru, they left. Takara shot her remaining visitor a lazy glance. "I'm not going to change my mind just because you bring me all that sake, just so you know." Tipping the gourd over and finding it empty, she cursed under her breath and lumbered to the cupboard, tearing it open to peer inside for any reserves Kami might have blessed her with overnight. "It's because of what's inside me, isn't it?" The QB. She froze for a fraction of a second, eyes narrowing. Then she closed the cupboard and slumped into the chair. "There's a law restricting mention of that, kid," she said, meeting the boy's eyes for the first time. They were startlingly clear. "I know. But Kurenai-sensei told me that I'm exempted. I'm allowed to mention it whenever I want, to whoever I want." "That's big coming from a kid. You're not teaching us because I've got the stupid demon inside me, is that it?" Naruto frowned. Takara turned away and drummed on the table. "Not specifically, no. Does it have anything to do with the fox?" The boy persisted. "It's the reason I'm never going to cross ways with shinobi ever again." "Does that satisfy you?" Naruto clamped his mouth shut. He hated these moments. He ran over the list in his head. Too many. The QB had caused so much pain that, sometimes, Naruto could not blame them for hating him. The nine-tailed fox's attack had left Takara Yamane in such shock that she had given up her career. She had been on the same genin team as Naruto's throat closed when he realized that his prisoner might have caused pain to Kurenai-sensei. Given her old teammate's reaction, he wondered how she could even look at him. "It's me," the genin said, startling Takara with his quiet voice that was barely a whisper. "It's always me. It's only me. I'm the problem." Takara narrowed her eyes at the boy. His head was bowed, his hands tight-fisted by his side. He was a stranger, unrelated to the loudmouth brat that had nearly swallowed her best sake cup. It was impossible to see what he was thinking, but the woman found herself wondering if she even wanted to. He had been silent for too long. Takara sighed, It would not bode well with their friendship if she turned one of Kurenai's kids into a nutcase. Hey kid, what if, he said, his voice slicing through hers like knife on paper. What if you didn't have to deal with me? Would that make you feel better? Takara pursed her lips. She downright almost said no. The kid hadn't asked to have the demons sealed in him. Hell, it wasn't like he had begged to be kicked around and spat on. He was just a normal boy beneath those whiskers and that ridiculous jumpsuit. Yet a small portion of her wanted to say yes. It took Takara a moment to realize that it was not because of his identity, as the demon container that had her averting her gaze and gripping the table edge. He just damn looked too much like Masuru. Naruto took the silence for what he interpreted it to be. Fine, he muttered. I'll stop bugging you to teach me. Takara did not know whether to feel relieved or not. But you have to teach Sakura. At this, she frowned. Now why would I do that? He took a deep breath. She's not like me. I've been ignored all my life to the point that I don't bloody hell care anymore. You don't want to teach me taijutsu, fine, you're not the first to reject me. But Sakura, you need to teach her. I saw how disappointed she was this morning when Kurenai-sensei told us that there was nothing else she could teach us on taijutsu. I don't ever want to see her sad like that. She stared unblinkingly at him. How noble of you, he growled. Didn't you hear anything I said? I'll think about it, you'd better. It startled Sakura to realize just how many people knew her now. She had come to know a lot of the villagers through teammates' missions, but could never remember all their faces. She was too distracted with trying to identify the familiar faces to notice where she was walking. Arg, Akamaru. Couldn't you at least have warned me? Gomenasai. I was, oh. Kiba. The pink-haired girl stepped back and looked up at the shop her teammate had just walked out of. She frowned. You're underage to drink alcohol, Kiba, he grinned. I'm not underage to buy it though, am I? Seeing her disapproving look, he shrugged. It's for, my mother, Sakura nodded. I see. Hey, I gotta go. Mom's going to kill me if I don't get these to her soon. I'll see you tomorrow at training, Sakura. Bye, she muttered. He was gone, with Akamaru bounding along his side. At strange intervals, Sakura was often taken aback by her team. Kiba and Akamaru were well, they hadn't been the sort of teammates Sakura had had in mind. It was not that they were unnoticeable, like the Aburain boy who always sat in the corner of their classroom and now on Sasuke's team. Maybe she hadn't thought of being on a team without Uchiha Sasuke. She hadn't seen him since graduation day. She knew only that he was in a team with the son of the White Fang as his sensei. Sakura wondered how different his sensei was from Yuhi Kurenai. Thinking about her mentor somehow settled her. Kurenai had exceeded her expectations of Jounin instructors, and Sakura suspected that there was still more to the Jounin than met the eye. But truth be told, Uzumaki Naruto was easily the most confusing of her team. Lately, he had been less outspoken. He was still unbelievably energetic, and honestly, Sakura wouldn't have been able to detect the change at all if she hadn't spent weeks with him. Naruto suddenly seemed to know when to stop fooling around, which was a nice change. But in exchange, he began asking Sakura to explain technical things whenever Kurenai-sensei was not around to enlighten him. It had been very frustrating at first, for both of them, but they somehow managed to reach a compromise. She soon learned that using food-related comparisons was the best way to get the message across. He didn't always get it in the first go, though. At times, if she was explaining something in more detail than he understood, he would throw a minor fit and end up attracting Kiba's attention. Then the three of them would somehow wind up at Ichiraku's, with Sakura lecturing them on whatever it was that had been brought up. These days, Sakura learned to carry spare scrolls on her in case she needed to draw diagrams, which, in Naruto's case, turned out to be more often than not. The pink-haired Kunoichi could not help but wonder exactly how he had survived his academy years. While he was not particularly dense, he did not seem to. Her thoughts were interrupted when a hand dropped onto her shoulder. Reacting unthinkingly, Sakura was halfway in an attempt to flip the intruder onto his back when he spoke. Easy there, girl. Immediately recognizing the gruff tone, Sakura dropped the arm and turned to bow toward Tanaka, mortified. I am so sorry, Tanaka-san. I was distracted. He waved a hand about and grumbled. Don't worry about it. My fault for startling you, I suppose. He waited for her complexion to even out, and then leaned forward. You wouldn't have managed to throw me anyway. Your build is too small to support my weight. She winced. Damn, what was I thinking? Kurenai-sensei had made sure they understood that misjudging an opponent once was enough to cost your life. If this had been during a mission, Sakura would most likely be lying in a ditch with a kunai piercing her windpipe in a standard kill. Tanaka frowned. There was something out of place about the girl. She was usually very well-mannered, and while it was not fair to say that she had broken that trait, she was more silent than usual. No, less attentive. He had called her name many times before he had hobbled out to take matters into his own hands. She appeared to be deep in thought, and judging by the abuse her lower lip was taking, they had not been happy thoughts. He cleared his throat. You got anything to do, kid? Parents expecting you home any time soon? She shook her head. Then would you mind helping an old cripple close up his shop? He sighed when she looked horrified at his self-description of his handicap. Kids these days, either too goddamn loud or too freaking serious. Still, the girl wasn't too bad. She caught on to things very quickly. He set her to counting the earnings for the day, and when she finished that astonishingly quickly, he let her help him move the fruit crates to clear space for the metal sheet that would close off the store from outside access. Usually his sister dropped by to help, but she had been assigned to a week-long border patrol that had Tanaka envying her. It had been he, once upon a time, who had marched along the dirt tracks on a vigilant watch. For 3 weeks after the loss of his leg, he had been the only Jounin out of Chunins to be stationed at the border gates. Even though the Hokage had allowed Tanaka to resume active shinobi duties, the latter knew that he would never be assigned missions above C rank ever again. By the end of his first month, Tanaka finally realized that he was no longer suited for his former career and had allowed his sister to convince him into early retirement. The grocer shook his head and sighed. No use reminiscing now. He turned, a crate tucked under each arm, to see Sakura bending to lift 3 stacked crates. He started. Those are full. I'll handle them later. His voice trailed off with incredulity. The girl was looking at him with a perplexed expression. She had, with only the slightest pause, bodily lifted the crates. 2 of them towered dangerously over her head, and Tanaka knew for a fact that they contained a hell lot of stock. Yet the meager genin was holding them as if they were nothing more than library books. What's the matter, Tanaka-san? Did you want to leave them there? He walked past her to set down his own load. You feed chakra into your arms to support the weight, don't you? He observed. Blinking, she nodded. Hi. Kurenai-sensei showed it to us once. She set down the crates where the grocer indicated, orderly unstacking and organizing them. Tanaka considered her. Truly, it was rare to see such developed chakra control in a genin. He would not be surprised if she could pull more out of a jutsu than a regular chunin. You'd be good for medical jutsu, he mused. Sakura straightened and cocked her head curiously to one side. Medical jutsu? Well, of course, it's too early for you to learn something like that. Tanaka grinned. Did I tell you that I was the only active jounin in the whole village to use medical jutsu? Wasn't part of a medical squad or anything, just a plain old jounin. None of the guys on my team ever came home with a scratch. Got well known for it too. Her eyes widened, but just as quickly, she lowered her gaze. It must be good to be able to specialize in something, she murmured. Is something on your mind today? Not really. It's better if you talk about it with someone. No, I'm okay. Really. Thanks for the concern, Tanaka-san. She glanced up at the setting sun. I have to go home now. I'll see you next time. Ja-ni. Tanaka watched the girl run off. Then, shaking his head with a grin, he reached up to pull the slide over his store. It seemed to Kiba that, other than the ability to track down his teammates on will, he also had the uncanny knack of colliding into them. Oh. Akamaru, you never, arg. Why doesn't anyone watch where they're going today? Seething, Kiba picked himself off the ground and grudgingly extended a hand to help his teammate, only to find that Naruto was already on his feet and charging past him. All at once, Kiba knew that Sakura was not the only one bothered by the unknown. He could see the grim scowl, furrowed brow and clenched fists all in perfect detail as Naruto stormed past. His arm clipped the Inuzukas in passing, but the shorter boy seemed not to notice. He carried himself with the grace of a bull and disappeared into the distance. Kiba frowned and rubbed his shoulder. It hadn't been a gentle clash in any manner of speaking. This unsettled him. He had never known Naruto to lose his temper. Something's not right, he murmured. Come on, Akamaru. Takara did not appear to have moved at all since he had left. She was still seated at the dusty table. The only difference was that she no longer had her hands around a cup of sake. Kiba easily remedied that. He tossed the bag he had been carrying onto the table with enough force to shatter it. Only Takara's hand had already slipped in to rescue it. Kiba growled furiously. Alright, spit it out. What the hell did you do to Naruto? She calmly plucked out the cork and poured the alcohol into a cup. Hey, I'm talking to you. Won't you at least look at me? Apparently not. Akamaru whined and Kiba glared. How can you be our sensei's teammate? You don't even get out of that seat, and even when you do it's only to knock the crap out of us. What's your problem? Shut up, kid. So she hadn't lost her voice. Pity, you're just so stubborn, Kiba fumed. You don't have a single bone of kindness in that twisted spine of yours. I don't get it. Really, why won't you just give Naruto and Sakura a chance? Kurenai-sensei said you were the only one who had more to teach them. Are you listening to me? No, she wasn't. Kiba heaved in deep breaths. He was starting to understand how Naruto had winded up in that foul mood. The woman was impossible to swerve in any manner. Perhaps the alcohol screwed with her brain and the ability to think. It wouldn't come as a surprise. Kiba was very much on the verge of following Naruto's example and leaving the hellhole. He'd already set a foot outside the door before he felt the tug on his pants and looked down to see Akamaru sinking his teeth into his trouser leg. For a long while, Kiba just stared at his canine companion. Akamaru was right. If he left, he would regret it. True, taijutsu training was unrelated to him, but it meant a lot to his teammates. Sakura was easily the smartest genin he knew, but books could only get her so far. And Naruto was hungry to learn anything. Kiba had seen him on the lake after training hours, sweating profusely over the walking on water exercise. If there was one thing that Naruto didn't know and would never learn to acknowledge, it was how to give up. But judging from the way he had left in such a hurry, he had just done that. In all honesty, Kiba did not enjoy the glum silence that Sakura and Naruto had been exuding recently. He wanted to be able to talk and bicker with them the next time they were assigned to garbage duty. He wanted to prove to Kurenai-sensei that they were a team now, that she didn't have to worry about their development. He wanted to see them smile. Inhaling deeply, Kiba turned back to Takara. What do I have to do to get you to teach Naruto and Sakura taijutsu? Takara slammed her cup onto the table. She would definitely be having a word with Kurenai. So frustratingly annoying. She scowled at the boy, and found herself staring deep into his narrowed eyes. She blinked. His gaze was exactly like Blondie's. Chuckling, she wiped her hand on the edge of her jeans and picked up her cup again. Outside. There's a tree. The biggest one. Kiba glanced over his shoulder. What about it? Kurenai should have taught you the tree walking exercise by now. So what if she has? I want you to hang upside down on one of the branches. The boy was already slipping off his jacket. She almost laughed out loud. For as long as I say, Kiba wavered. Knowing the difficult woman, she would just drag it on until he gave up. They had practiced staying stationary on a branch before just the previous week. While he had not worn himself to exhaustion, he was well aware of his limit. And upside down, too. Despite the clan training he had undergone to prevent such a thing from happening, the blood would eventually rush to his head and kill him. It was impossible. He glowered at the woman, ready to accuse her of attempted murder. But then he remembered Naruto and Sakura. He knew how much the two of them yearned to improve, to become stronger. He recalled their ambitions from their first meeting, and he almost chuckled. To be Hokage and to prove that first-in-line ninjas could also be successful, how the hell could they do that without getting stronger? Will you teach them if I do that? Takara was well accustomed to hiding surprise, so not a flicker of the emotion reached her face. I can't guarantee that. Kiba's teeth made a grinding sound. At least think about it. I might. Promise? I'm not a kid like you. I don't do promises. I can only give you my word. It's your choice whether or not you trust it. Kiba lowered the finger he had been jabbing at the woman. He stomped out of the house. A little over half an hour later, when she had exhausted the sake the kid had brought her, Takara poked her head out the shattered window. Why are you doing this? She called to the boy. As far as I'm aware, Kurenai didn't ask me to teach you. Kiba was well aware of the trickle of sweat that had